Welcome back, folks. We're at the Ball and Breakfast podcast here. I'm Patrick Miller alongside Wayne Pua. Brand new edition. We're staying on the same themes. We're going through week 3 reaction to NFL games this past weekend. We're also going to touch on some topics in the NBA that have been trending, as well as NFL, MLB too. So, stick with us here. Thanks for any sort of subscriptions, follows, likes, comments on any of our social media channels, especially YouTube. It's nice to get those, analytics going, get us closer to monetizing, as well as any sort of following on Instagram. I feel like we've, done a good amount of damage over the last few weeks or so, getting new followers. Wayne actually posted about his trip to New York. As of last weekend, he was there to see Aaron Judge. Also put together a reel that's now over 4,000 views, 100 plus likes on it. So maybe we'll just start there at, your experience in New York, and also maybe talk about Aaron Judge and his whole chase to, take down the big record that was established by Roger Maris. We're not going to talk about Barry Bonds, but Wayne, go ahead. Tell us about New York. What'd you like? What'd you not like?
Yeah, New York itself, I went there with my buddy for his birthday, and we were both baseball fans, and it's definitely a different level. Like, being in Chicago, like for a lot of people, Chicago's like the big city, but then, when you go to New York, you're like, oh, this is like an even bigger city. But definitely the first thing I noticed, obviously, was like the trash on the sidewalk, and then I was like, oh wait, they don't have alleys. That's right, that's a thing, because everybody needs to live in a 200 square foot studio or whatever. So that's the whole vibe. That's the nature of everything about New York. That being said, hey, the food, the culture, the energy of the city, like it's hard to put to words to exactly what New York's about, but yeah, it was definitely at a different level. I went to Russ and Dutter's, which is a great restaurant if you like salmon and like bagels. I had a really delicious meal there. But when I was going to uh, the game at Yankee Stadium, though, was in a Lyft ride over there. It took about like an hour and a half from Lower Manhattan. It was pretty nuts. Me and my buddy, we just split a Lyft ride over there. So, but probably not the best decision, because we're like, oh yeah, like Lyft, it says like an hour. We should be there in time. And have enough time to like look around the area, maybe go to Rucker Park. Yeah, none of that ever happened. We missed the first half of the inning, so we saw, or did we? Actually, yeah. No, actually, I take that back. We arrived around this time, about the first half of the inning, but we actually were in line when Aaron Judge was at bat. And then everybody was like, oh, watching on their phones and everything. And I was like, okay, maybe I ought to watch on my phone. And then after he struck out, it was like, okay, he struck out. Okay, we're good. We're good. We're good. But then, yeah, every single time he was up to bat, everybody was on their feet, putting their phones out, cheering him on. Got a single. I think it was his only hit of the game, but hey, it was a good time. The Yankees did win, and you can definitely see like the stadium is very well kept, state of the art, for sure, and actually not too bad. The pricing, I don't know if it's all this inflation. It's like, oh, a hot dog is only that much, like $15. Like I thought it'd be a lot worse. So, all in all, a fairly good experience. But yeah, New York is an entire vibe for sure.
Man, $15 is one expensive glizzy, I gotta say. I mean, but I'm not surprised. It's New York, and no, I went to Yankee Stadium, the new one, for the first time last season. I went to the original Yankee Stadium when I was in 8th grade, I want to say. Definitely a different vibe, although they look pretty similar. There's just something about the first Yankee Stadium. It's kind of like that iconic old baseball stadium feel that you kind of got. It had a more modern look. It really was reminiscent of like the White Sox Comiskey Park Stadium that we grew up going to a lot, but just holds a lot more history. The newer one I like, but in the same sense, I kind of feel like maybe by trying to do the replica of the old stadium. It kind of like loses a little bit of its own character. And to be honest with you, today's stadiums, I also feel like are just a little bit too like standard in the way that they're built and the way that they're kind of, produced in mass. I feel like, especially on the East Coast, if you go to like Philly, the New York Mets, the New York Yankees, even Cincinnati in a way, they kind of all have similar characteristics. And I found each stadium to be like, they're newish, they're nicer, they have, good selection of food and other things. But there's something about like the character of a stadium, whether it's new or old, it's kind of like you can kind of put your finger on and say, okay, that is special because this. And but anyways, I think you go into New York and doing the whole experience, especially being part of like Aaron Judge's history, we're still waiting for it. I mean, we're at 60. I can't imagine what's going through his head right now. I mean, I'm sure he's like knowing he's got to do it, but it's like, he's still like in the moment, and there's just a ton of pressure on him. But all I can really say to Aaron Judge is like, he's putting together good at bats from what I've seen. Like, I think last night he had 4 walks, and I'm like, I watched a couple of his at bats against Toronto and Jose Barrios, and just really well composed for a guy going through all that he's going through. So I'm rooting for him. Hope he gets there. And shout out to Prince Street Pizza in New York. That is literally my favorite pizza ever. They're kind of curled pepperonis on that Sicilian style pizza. I mean, seriously, the sauce can't be beat, man. So shout out to Prince Street.
Yeah, for sure. I did have New York pizza, and I will say it has its own place. It's definitely not the deep dish, and I don't want to start World War III with any of this. So, but yeah, there's some good spots for pizza, I would say, in New York. So, kudos to having good dough and good tomato sauce being put together. So,
yeah. Well, without further ado, let's get into the meat of what we're going to cover here tonight. We're going to go back to the NFL, go through the week 3 games. I feel like the last couple of weeks we've, analyzed each game that we've, seen on TV. We're, analyzing these teams and kind of, seeing where they're at in their own seasons and who's really going to step out, who's going to take a step back this year. So without further ado, we'll go to the Thursday night game from last week. The Steelers were in Cleveland, and they came up short. The final score was 29-17 Browns. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass it off to you, man.
Good for the Browns. I mean, it's good that they're coming in with Jacoby Brissett under center. I think we touched on this last week, but, when you're dealing with a backup quarterback, I mean, average play is like all you could ask for, and I feel like he's just done a good job at like doing what's been asked of him, keeping the team together. Focusing on their strengths. Their strengths are going to be the defense. It's going to be that running game. So, just turn around, put the ball straight into Nick Chubb's center, right into his gut, give it to Kareem Hunt, if he's curling out, doing any sort of screen routes or anything like that, or, put it in his gut as well. And like everything should be okay. And then just, rely on that defense, the special teams to like carry you to a victory, especially when you're at home. On the flip side of the coin, I think the things that I'm seeing now are, Mitchell Trubisky, although his numbers won't show you that he, came up short, it's just confidence with him. I feel like he has 2 personalities, it's like sometimes he'll show up at a game and you'll just feel like, hey, he's really on his game today. He's showing his athleticism. He can pass a little bit. He's not making too many mistakes, but then, you kind of get a game where he's just like, he just doesn't want to take the reins. He doesn't want to, push the agenda. Comes up with kind of a mediocre stat line, and the team's just kind of like wondering week to week, like, can this guy, be somebody we can trust to kind of be our quarterback and carry us to the next level. Gotta say, I know that offensive line isn't like one of the best in the league, but, Najee Harris having, 15 carries again for only 50, some yards. I saw, I think he did hit the pay dirt for a score, but in the same sense, just kind of like wondering what's his season going to look like, because I think everybody's expecting him, especially us, like being fantasy owners and like, hey, Najee, where are you at? Like, we want him to get to 100 yards and maybe have 5 to 10, receptions a game and just be, the absolute dominant back that we expected him to be coming into this year after, really promising rookie year. I did see one really aggressive, I want to call it like a hand check or like a stiff arm, but he did show like some power to his running game that, I'd like to see more of. I know after like yards after contact, and I think his elusiveness rating are pretty low to start off the year. So a lot of analysts are really down on him as a runner. I know his foot injuries are also to be kind of a concern. And you've got, Warren kind of backing him up, Jalen Warren, kind of in his footsteps. I think he had 4 rushes for 30 yards, which is pretty promising. But it's kind of like, what's the identity of this Steelers team going to be going forward? I think they're not looking too good. They're not looking like a team that's going to compete too much this year, especially without TJ Watt. But Wayne, did you have any other opinions about this game or anything you'd like to touch on about either team?
I mean, I think that the Steelers, like the highlight of their offense right now is just Pickens making amazing catches. Like that's about it. To your point, like, yeah, just Harris hasn't, taken it to the next level, whether it be the line or, something with the injuries that are happening to him, but he hasn't been able to take it off to the next level so far this season. And to your point with regards to Trubisky and being able to run the offense, like, man, Nagy did some stuff to him apparently psychologically. So he just hasn't been able to adapt it. He definitely has lost that confidence. It feels like you definitely see that like with how he interacts with some of the wide receivers. I think there was some like pictures or videos of like some of the wide receivers complaining and like, oh, I'm open, and I know that happens a lot, but it only felt like it happened to Trubisky several times over the course of this game. So I think Freiermuth, like, he ought to be much more featured, I think, in their tight end, right? He got to be featured much more into their offense. I feel like it seems like Trubisky and him have some sort of a rhythm, but just hasn't been able to get in the ball towards him as much. So yes, I am partially a fantasy owner of him, but still the point I think is still taken that he seems to have good chemistry with his tight ends. So Trubisky does. So I feel like he needs to feature them more. Moving on to, I guess, with the Browns a little bit more. Yeah, like I agree with regards to Brissett. Like in a way, like he's like the perfect kind of segue quarterback to Watson. In that, I guess people don't feel threatened by Watson or by Brissett necessarily, and they're like, oh, this person's going to take my job. That being said, Brissett is a veteran, but he's a very capable veteran. Played pretty decently in Indianapolis. Studied under Tom Brady, for a little bit there too. So he's a very capable player, and he definitely has a lot of weapons around him. Utilized Cooper a bunch. We had 170 yards plus a touchdown. Njoku as well, and yeah, you definitely facilitated the offense as well as you could for this game. And Nick Chubb is just being Nick Chubb again. My worst regret so far in my fantasy drafting experience, not taking him, taking Dobbins instead. So, but yeah, the Browns are kind of exactly who I thought they were, and the Steelers, after that win and everything that they had, it was like, okay, maybe this could be something, but it turns out it's kind of a false alarm. It looks like, yeah.
Yeah, you alluded to this, I want to say after week 1, but you were looking at the Browns schedule and were like, oh, these are all winnable games. And you started going through like, feasibly their first half of the season. And, next week they've got Atlanta at home. So who's not to say they might start off the year 3-1? And, with the way that the AFC North has been looking, they could be sitting around the top of the division, when Watson's ready to come back, if they can keep this adrenaline moving. But it's like, yeah, Brissett just has to do his job. They have enough talent surrounding him where they can make, this all work in the interim. And at the very least, Brissett, will keep a NFL job, whether it's as a backup or, kind of a bridge quarterback for any team going forward. And I feel like Gilbert Arenas said it best on a podcast recently. He said, I remember when I was getting paid in the 100,000s at the end of my career, and I was balling out in practice, just like doing work on guys that were making millions and millions of bucks. And I'd always ask my coach, like, why am I not like getting more playtime? And they're like, well, that guy makes way more money than you do. So it kind of just reminds me of the situation. Like, no matter how good Brissett does, you've got like $200 million like riding on Deshaun Watson. So like, no matter what happens, he's going to get the ball. But I think Brissett's like a good, person that can back him up. Hopefully, I mean, if he can just keep this going, I was pretty down on him after last week's performance, and maybe there will be a lot of that, like kind of like these up and down weeks for Brissett. But anytime he's seemingly on his game, like they're going to have a really good shot at winning football games.
Yeah, and maybe he turns, maybe the Browns do make a Super Bowl run of some sort, and he becomes like the Nick Folk of this team. I could certainly see that in a way that, like, they're obviously different players, but maybe there's some similarities in there, and that, like, they had a couple good seasons, both Nick Folk and Brissett, and it's like, if they do win the Super Bowl and everything, it's like, oh yeah, but then they also had this quarterback that kind of nudged them out a little bit out of the team there. Just because of they're young, they had a lot of money going towards that quarterback, so that's just the nature of the beast in the game here. So yeah.
And by Nick Folk, I think you mean Big Dick Nick Foles.
Big Dick, the tripod. Yeah,
because Nick Folk,
yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, just so people don't think like, hey man, that kicker, had taken a team to the Super Bowl.
Throw a ball. Yeah, Nick Foles.
All right, good.
Yeah.
But Nick Folk is a good kicker. But anyways, that sounds pretty good. Browns are rolling. Steelers need to, do some more work internally to get themselves back on track going forward. But in the Sunday slate, the first one we had was the Chiefs coming up a little bit short to the Indianapolis Colts 20-17. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll grass this. This is quite a remarkable game, I think. Chiefs, I think they were like seen as like probably one of the top teams in the NFL, like them and probably the Bills, which we'll talk about later too. But the special teams, like, honestly, it felt like it lost, or was one of the reasons why the Chiefs lost. I think they got rid of their kicker actually after the game. It wasn't all his fault, but there was a couple fumbles, or there was one fumble by Sky Moore at the beginning of the game. And then there was the next kickoff or the next punt that was to Sky Moore, which I think was like the sequence afterwards. He tried to make a fair catch, but he missed it, and the ball went all the way to like the 1 yard line. So not a great way to start off the game. Like, it's great. You have Patrick Mahomes, but you expect him to go 99 yards just like, right out the gate. Maybe you're a little spoiled and expect that, but it didn't have the best start to the game. And the Colts, they were able to capitalize on those early kind of mistakes there on the special team side, and they put up some points there at the beginning, and their defense played a pretty sound game overall. Even had the last second interception there against Mahomes to seal off the game. So overall, good game. Obviously, a good win for the Colts. This was definitely a kind of a stunner, just the way that the Chiefs were just rampaging through teams and how the Colts were kind of struggling along and everything. But first home game of the season for Matt Ryan as a Colt. I guess this is as good as it gets, I think, with regards to the expectations for him. So good on the Colts for that. But obviously, if we can get more of this from the Colts, that would be great. But I don't know if it can always be expected to play up to this level to beat the Chiefs. So
yeah, this was a must win for the Colts, especially at home. Ryan's numbers look consistent with what he should be doing under center, brought over, with a lot of expectations. I mean, Taylor got more carries than I think the 9 that he got the week prior. So it's kind of like just nice to see him getting his, standard workload, even though his results are kind of, a mixed bag. They brought back, Pittman, this week, and he had, a pretty solid line. So I think, like, as long as that 3-headed monster is doing enough on offense to, put up points where, defense doesn't have to play out of their minds, to get a victory, I think they'll be good. Just an important team win because, you go to 0-2-1, starting off your year, that's really not a great place to be. And I think this is the kind of win that'll get their momentum back, moving forward, especially to kind of like take care of their division. we'll talk about another team that's working pretty hard to push them in the same division coming up here on our review. But for the Chiefs, I'm not sweating this too much. There's going to be losses along the way for all, of the best teams in the league. I think everybody, goes through their ups and downs throughout the year. There's always some weirdness that'll happen, week to week. But I expect the Chiefs to come back next week and just, kind of continue on their path to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, if I'm a Chiefs fan, I'm like, all right, well, let's get this nasty loss out of the way. Things will be better, I think.
Eagles 24, Commanders 8. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass this off to you, Mr. DC man.
Man, Eagles are rolling. I really like this team, man. I was texting with my buddy who actually went to the game. He's an Eagles fan. He lives in Virginia too. He was at the game, and we were having a running joke going back about this meme he sent me through Instagram, and it was about Kirk Cousins, and basically like it's a kind of a montage of all the different types of Kirk Cousins you can be. You can be like the great Kirk Cousins, the average Kirk Cousins. And every time Kirk Cousins is mentioned, there's another player who gets like kind of thrown in the way. So like I basically texted him Carson Cousins because I was just like, this is a total Carson Wentz game where like, he's hitting the turf often. He's, just not moving the ball along, not putting up points. Like there's turnovers happening left and right. It's just a really ugly Carson Wentz game. So Carson Cousins was kind of the title of this game for me, but Carson Cousins happened because the Eagles are just on fire, man. This team, just firing on all cylinders. Their defense is top notch. Jalen Hurts again just puts up another, glorious stat line, completely in control this entire game. They're just showing their dominance at this point. I told him on the text thread, I was like, I think the Eagles, I think he said the Eagles are probably going to win the NFC East. And I was like, probably. I'm like, they're probably going to win the NFC, and he said, I'm not going to say that. And I just said, I'll say it. Like, I think they'll win the NFC because literally this team is young. They're fast. They've got, control of the trenches. If Hurts puts up 340 and 3 TDs every week with some like massive rushing yards and just has like 3 or 4 different weapons he can pass to, they protect the defensive side of things. Like this team doesn't have a lot of holes, honestly. And it just comes down to experience. Like when they get in those high pressure moments against the best teams in the league with everything on the line, will they show up then? That'll be like the biggest test that they'll have to go through this year. But, what they're showing out of the gate, like I have a lot of confidence in this team to, NFC championship game. I could maybe say like, let's book it. Super Bowl, not yet, but in the same way, like they're heading in that direction.
Yeah, no, for sure. They're like you said, they're firing on all cylinders. Jalen Hurts is playing really well. Year 2 in an offense with those weapons now with AJ Brown and everything. Like he's really taking off right now. So, making the smart choices on making the smart reads on defense and everything. And then he had the Eagles defense itself, though, like, they're creating that pass rush. Graham is having a hell of a season. I think this game he had like 2.5 sacks against Wentz. Had 9 sacks total against Wentz, which, we all know that's kind of Wentz's thing is he's kind of just a big, like older Ben Roethlisberger in a way, just, not exactly the most mobile person, but, definitely has a hell of an arm. So, they really are firing on all cylinders. They got the speed out, wide out. They got the pass rush. So, and, Slay's been making plays in the secondary too. So, really overall, a great team. Like you were saying, their roster itself is, seems like they're elevating each week now. So, and yeah, now they're 3-0. So, very much happy for all the Eagles fans out there. But yeah, this is as good of a team in the NFC, or as good of a team in the NFL that's playing right now.
Yeah. And I guess on the flip side of things, like I'm not giving up on the Commanders having a respectable enough season. I think one thing that they have to kind of get into check is how that running game is going to actually work. Because Antonio Gibson is just not it. I mean, I think he's a good athlete. I think he could be brought in on different situations. I know they were trying to get him involved in like the return game, maybe more of the passing game. He could run every so often, but they need to find some sort of feature back because it's going to be tough if Wentz is always, dropping back, having to, do reads on, one of his like 4 top receivers with, the guys they have. And I don't know. I don't think you want to be putting that kind of bonus onto Carson Wentz. And then, in the same sense, like they got to get Chase Young back because defensively, I feel like they're playing in these shootouts. If they don't have it on offense, like they're going to give up those points regardless. So they need to get everything back and like into check, I guess, defensively too. Like they need, that pass rush to really work and, kind of bail out their secondary. So I'm not going to give up on the Commanders fully. I don't think it's like, for me personally, like I don't think they're a terrible team. I just think like they really need to work on a couple of different aspects of their game.
Yeah, for sure. And it is a I guess it is. You can kind of see like, is this a weaker division? With the Giants and everything. Like I know they're 2-1, but they're obviously their talent just doesn't scream like this team's going to win a bunch of games necessarily, especially with Daniel Jones. We'll definitely touch on them later, but and then with the Cowboys and it's like how much is this Cooper Rush magic going to go? So they're definitely in a winnable division. Obviously the Eagles are playing lights out, but the rest of the division there's definitely some question marks here and there, and I'm sure they can probably squeak out some victories here and there. They do have some playmakers on defense, and that usually can go a long way. And Gibson, he definitely is an up and down type of person and fumbles the ball, I think is his whole thing, right? But could definitely get some yardage here and there. But if Brian Robinson, I know we talked about him before about kind of recovering from a gunshot wound. Maybe he does. I think they're saying possibly week 4 at the earliest. I don't know what the latest is on all that, but if he is able to come in like maybe week 8 or something, maybe he's able to contribute and push the Commanders a little bit more forth on offense. So,
speaking of 2-1, the Bears beat the Houston Texans 23-20 at home. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'm gonna pass on this. I only watched the highlights. I wasn't able to watch the game in New York and everything. So, yeah, I want to hear your take first.
I'm with you. I mean, I didn't get a chance to actually watch this game just based on what was aired regionally, but Dameon Pierce had a breakout game for the Texans on their side of things. I mean, to get the majority of the carries again, put up 100+ rushing yards, get a score. I mean, that's huge as far as his career goes and kind of establishing himself as a pro. Can we expect that every week? Maybe not, but in the same sense, it gives Davis Mills a reliable back to kind of build with over time if he's still going to be under center as their quarterback. From the Bears side of things, all I've been hearing about is, Justin Fields and his lack of pass attempts and, 106 yards, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns passing. It's like, who is this guy? And it's really tough for me, man. I don't know how to put it or how to evaluate it because, again, I look at what he's surrounded with and I'm like, what are the expectations? Like, what does this guy have to prove this year? And how are we going to be able to evaluate him with this piecemeal set of receivers that he has? And, Khalil Herbert had a breakout game. Montgomery, got injured. So, it was nice to see Herbert just, tear it up. I mean, 157 yards, 7.9 yards per carry, a couple touchdowns. Can't complain about that. I just don't know what to say. I mean, these are two of the, I think, lower seeded teams in the entire league. I think Bears sitting at 2-1. It's kind of a farce, but in the same sense, nice to get a victory. Nice to, protect home, in that sense. But it's just coming down to Justin Fields and me. And, thinking about a comment that I heard elsewhere, I can't remember which network aired it, but the fact that Justin Fields wasn't drafted by this regime is something that's starting to circulate a little bit. Like, is this the guy that they want to put their trust into long term? Are they already getting ahead of themselves with a guy that they think is his superior somehow, some way through the draft. So I'm not really sure, but in the same sense, it's a complete possibility. It's kind of sad if that really is, something they're thinking about. Like, do they actually think a guy like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud is just an outright superior talent to a guy like Justin Fields, where, hey, they're willing to tank this season in order to kind of bank on, the number one pick and maybe get the quarterback of their choosing? Like, I don't really know, but to be honest with you, the players are going to play, the coaches are going to coach. They can still win football games, but at the end of the day, is this organization trying to lose football games? Quite possibly, because there's no real explanation for me, to think about why is this guy only throwing, 17 passes when, you got a guy like Josh Allen who's throw like over 60 attempts, in another game. So completely baffling. I'm thinking they're tanking, but Wayne, you don't have to comment on that, but like, if you want to, you can. Otherwise, what do you think of this score of this game, these teams?
I mean, I feel like I have to comment on it, but yeah. No. I mean, it's like I think if they are tanking, like, then they're doing a pretty bad job because they won the game. But and I know a lot of people talk about, oh, they won the game, so what does it matter? It does matter. Like, this definitely is one of those. The Texans are just a bad team. Like, they're not gonna. It's probably them, and I mean, they're probably one of the front runners, I guess, for having one of the worst records in the NFL, I think, this season. So, is Justin Herbert the person? I saw these like tweets and comparisons between him and Josh Allen. Like, was it, I think, 11 starts now into their careers, and it's like, well, it was pretty similar, I guess, in that sense. I think the biggest thing, though, is, they just haven't surrounded. I mean, they just obviously haven't surrounded Justin Fields with the talent. And usually you need that in order to. We've been talking about this on this podcast for a while now. You need veteran presences around a young quarterback. Like, you simply do. It's very rare you're going to have like a Peyton Manning. Even Peyton Manning had talent around him. He had Marshall Faulk on his team when he got drafted, and they also had like. I think eventually like Marvin Harrison, and then had that transition from Marvin Harrison to Reggie Wayne. So, he's had weapons his whole career, that some veteran presences around his whole career. So it's like, we definitely need that. And at the wideout position, a little bit more so probably, or like the tight end. Yeah, I don't know if any of the players right now are the answer for it. I mean, Mooney just isn't getting targets, right? Kmet isn't getting targets, and Justin Fields had those 2 interceptions, and it's like, well, what exactly? He made some bad reads. He simply made some bad reads. So, there definitely is a lot. There's definitely a lot of warranted criticism that I think belongs on Justin Fields. Now, hey, great. I like that there's this whole idea of, okay, he's going back doing some film work, or he's like going out and doing a nice workout after whatever. Okay, that means nothing to me. That absolutely means zero. I have zero. It absolutely does. Like, okay, like, oh, does Peyton Manning, whenever he throws a 4 interception game, okay, is he always gonna go look at? Okay, but he in the next game he's gonna toss 5 touchdowns. Like, that's the difference. Like, it doesn't matter necessarily how hard you work. Like, I don't care about that. I care about, are you actually going to turn out some results? So great. All this sounds fun. Like, it's going to be like a nice tall tale for the Justin Fields lovers out there. And hey, I want to see Justin Fields succeed, but I don't care. Honestly, don't care about any of this other miscellaneous stuff. Like, I think as Bears fans, I don't know if we're just desensitized to what bad quarterbacking looks like. Like, it's not just bad, it's the worst of the entire NFL. Like, standards higher. Like, watch more games. Get out of these ecosystem. I feel like, like they're in one side of the social media spectrum, and like, I'm in this thing called reality, and I don't know. So I don't get this whole like, okay, like, let's be patient with Justin Fields. Okay, we traded up for him, sacrificed all that. And, we can have a balanced perspective. Like, at least that's how I feel about Justin Fields. A balanced perspective in that, hey, he's getting a lot of flack for all, from the national media, whatever, for bad play. But how is it not warranted? And can he still be better? Yes. So both of those things can be true. But as a Bears fan, at least I'm just thankful they won. And in regards to tanking though, hey, if they can get what's it, Jackson Smith, I think, from Ohio State, hey, maybe it is worth it, or maybe we can surround ourselves with some other talented wide receivers out there. But hopefully we get maybe some in the later rounds and position ourselves pretty well if we do make a playoff push. But I'm not holding my breath because this offense looks pretty bad. So
yeah. I mean, either we're tanking or Justin Fields is like much worse than we all expected. I mean, I know that younger quarterbacks are going to have their struggles, but like if they only trust him to throw the ball 15 to 20 times a game and he's putting up those numbers, and it's just like then it's at levels that we don't really understand yet. I need to watch more Bears football. I don't know if I always get a Bears game, broadcasting live. I can stream it obviously, but it's like I'm going to have to watch Bears football much more closely now because I'm like convinced they're trying to tank. And if that's not the case, like, then yes, like with whatever pick we end up getting, like quarterback's going to have to be one of those priorities because this isn't going to cut it, man. It's not going to cut it in today's NFL, even if we're trying to be like super crafty with the quarterback run and our own running game and screen passes like we've always done is the Bears organization. It's just like, yeah, there's got to be more to our offense than this. And hey, yeah, again, congrats that they got a win here. But I see this being very tough sledding for them going forward with more established teams.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's like, hey, look, we can actually compare the stats maybe from the quarterback that we beat over there, but it's like Davis Mills, like same draft and everything, taken later, like his stats are better. Like, obviously he's not as flashy. He doesn't flash that exuberance that Justin Fields has with the moxie and everything. Doesn't make those, breaking several tackles to throw the ball like 50 yards or whatever. But he makes the right reads some of the time, I should say. He's not a perfect quarterback by all means. He's still, Davis Mills and for the 0-2-1 Houston Texans. So by all means, I'm not saying he's a perfect quarterback, but his stats are simply better. And I don't want to just be like, oh, just it's all the stats. Like it's just he's just accumulating stats from big losses and stuff like that. Like no, like they're actually pretty decent stats going forth, and he's passed it a lot more than Justin Fields, and it can certainly be argued that he doesn't have as much talent as Justin Fields anyways. Like Mooney, I think they have Brandon Cooks, right, and they have some kind of like Aiken, I think, and some other wideouts there, but it's like nothing that is, they don't have like a DeAndre Hopkins anymore, right? They have probably the similar talent level on offense, I would say, maybe as the Bears, and they're just doing better. So, maybe it's a combination of Getsy just not knowing how to utilize Justin Fields and kind of just like, all right, I'm just going to give the ball to the running backs and figure that out. So maybe there's a little bit of that. I do know that the offensive line did not protect Justin Fields that well, so that definitely is something. But then that's where you got to figure out, okay, let's do some rollouts. Let's do some play action off that, right? To slow down the pass rush, some screens, some slants, right? That was just completely missing, I think, from this past game. And yeah, it's hurting Justin Fields. Like get the confidence up, throw some easy passes, get some slants, get some some easy ones out there, and then eventually throw out a bomb out there and get the more intermediate pass game going. Still a young quarterback. Got to build confidence in him. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to play devil's advocate very minorly, fact that they had 160 rushing yards from Khalil Herbert with an 8-yard, average. Maybe they just saw what was working for, their running game, or like, okay, let's punt on the passing game because we can just, shove this down their throats. And maybe like that's what bailed them out for this game. But agreed. Like going forward, we're going to need to have that passing game ramped up like quickly because not a lot of teams in the NFL are going to allow you to kind of get away with the things they got away with against Houston. But yeah, man. Anyways, I can move on to the next one if you can. Let's just kind of see where the Bears take us this season.
Yeah, no, let's move on because it's one of those. I think somebody described it perfectly. Like we won, but it didn't feel like a win. I think was the biggest takeaway. It just was not a nice looking game, especially against if it was against like the Kansas City Chiefs or like a good team that we just snuck this through. Okay, fine, we'll take it. But it was against the Texans. Like, come on, we can do better, right? So
yeah, no doubt. We had the Las Vegas Raiders on the road against the Tennessee Titans. They came up short 24-22. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass it off.
I'm going to pass on all of this. Like another game that I don't care about. Just frankly, the Raiders, to me, dropping games that they probably should win. Tennessee Titans, like, don't know what happened to them. But again, I feel like this was like, who wants to lose this game? Can't really put my finger on either team just yet. And I think that in part is why I'm just kind of passing this along because I don't think much of either team.
Yeah, it was kind of just I mean, I didn't really watch the game. I just kind of followed along here and there and watched a few of the replays. But Henry basically helped run the ball and just run it down the Raiders' throats essentially. And the Raiders, man, 0-3, after making the playoffs last season, just not the best start. Devontae Adams is not happy, and I think we saw some of that. They're also giving the ball to Hollins. I do remember him seeing some highlights of him just having some awesome plays over there. There was definitely some offensive explosions I think happening on the Raiders side, but Derek Carr, I should say, his brother. For the Raiders, he just has not had the best season whatsoever. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen after the end of this season, but this whole Derek Carr bringing over his buddy, trading an arm and a leg to get Devontae Adams, just they aren't necessarily the issue. It's the allocation of resources a little bit more so, but it just hasn't worked out in terms of wins, I guess you can say. But yeah, the Raiders, with McDaniels compared to who's the special teams coach? I think Bayasaka, or I forgot how to pronounce his name, but yeah, like I think the feel around the team is just different with McDaniels as the head coach versus who they had last season. It was like their special teams coach, and they went through all this adversity, but it always felt like that they were in games. They lost John Gruden because he said some really crazy stuff and all that, and had several of their players get kicked off the team because one killed somebody and the other one I think did some stupid stuff. So a lot of things happened to the team last year, but for some reason, at least right now, it just seems like the Raiders they're a different team right now. They just don't have that moxie. So hopefully they can turn it around. But yeah, this was definitely a winnable game that they just simply lost. So
yeah. The only thing I wanted to touch on was McDaniels. To a much lesser extent, I feel like he has Urban Meyer vibes to him. It's like he can be a great coach, in the capacity that works for him. Like Urban was, awesome on the college scene, and maybe with recruitment was, able to just bring in the type of talent to get him over the hump. I feel like McDaniels, being tied to the Belichick tree, maybe he lucked out in ways to, having the ability to coach Tom Brady and kind of falling back on Belichick's genius at a certain point in time where, he stepped out and did his Denver thing. I think he had one good season and then everything else was pretty forgettable. Came running right back to New England, went toward that Indianapolis job and like accepted it and then pulled back at the last second. I mean, that to me is like more of like character, type concerns I might have with a coach like him, but he just gives me this, like vibe of arrogance where it's like, hey, I'm so special. I'm Josh McDaniels and ... But it's like, you really haven't proven anything on your own 2 feet. I'll give you a lot of credit for being the OC of a dynasty, but in the same sense, like head coaching a team and like getting buy-in and, kind of being on the same page with your players week to week is so important. And, if I just had a guy like that I had to like report to and, try to build a connection with, like, I just just genuinely speaking, think like he seems like the kind of guy I wouldn't want to follow if I was on, some sort of team. So I don't know if any of that's playing a part, but I think we talked about the O-line for the Raiders and just how big of a hole that is. And if your game, truly is going to be predicated on your offense and your ability to pass the ball, you just need time. And they don't have that. And they don't have like an established runner to, maybe even change up the sequence a little bit. Like, Josh Jacobs has, kind of been dogged across the like analyst field. And, you could have as many weapons as you want. Like the Raiders had Randy Moss at a certain point, and that didn't work out for him. And, now they got Devontae Adams, and like that's special, but, wide receiver is not going to, definitely like alone won't translate into wins for your team. So, it's just got to be humming on so many different facets of their game. And, it just seems like a lot more sizzle and not enough steak.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's Richard Biasaka, right? I think he was the coach last year, but yeah, they just missed that. They're missing that moxie right now. And I do know Josh Jacobs, like he definitely like came out the gate pretty, had a solid rookie season, and it's like they're drafting which what was his name, Mayock, right, who's supposed to be like that NFL, it was like an NFL draft nerd that's on the online forums, right, all of a sudden becomes GM, and this is what happens, right? So just kind of threw out some bangers here and there, but then had some ones that just did not land whatsoever. Josh Jacobs had a decent career, just hasn't been in a good situation. I don't think the Raiders are probably utilizing him right now. And yeah, that defense, that the offensive line you're talking about, not the best. And yeah, I do remember seeing like Carr getting sacked several times. So it just hasn't been a good season overall for the Raiders so far.
For sure. Next game, we had the Miami Dolphins pulling out a huge victory against the Buffalo Bills at home, 21-19. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll grass this. There's no reason why the Dolphins should have won this game. Like, there's zero, and they did. So I don't know if it was the coaching or what. Like, oh, by the way, like, yeah, their coach, Mike McDaniels, he looks exactly like my brother-in-law. I just like came together once I saw, when I was video conferencing my brother-in-law. But anyway, back to this game. Melvin Ingram was wreaking havoc, getting a pass rush to Josh Allen fairly frequently. So that definitely caused some things here and there. But, the Bills had double the yardage and also the field time as the Dolphins. And they only had one turnover. Like, how does this work? And, I think they had like several more penalties than the Dolphins, but it's like, you would expect that still, like the score to be a little bit more, would just be a little bit different. There really was I think the one thing that happened though is that the Dolphins played a fairly clean game. Tua didn't actually have the biggest numbers or anything like that. I know he had that one big pass to Waddle, but other than that though, there really wasn't too much on the offensive side. And the Dolphins even had that butt blocked punt as well. So that was pretty interesting. Yeah, I think that went for a safety and all. So but for whatever reason, like the football gods thought, the Dolphins, they got this underdog mentality, and after last week's game too, like when they came back in the fourth quarter, against the Ravens, like they just beat the Ravens and the Bills. Like these were the two best teams in the NFL. So the football gods are in their favor because there's absolutely zero reason why the Dolphins ought to have won this game or should have won this game. So.
Yeah, the mojo looks pretty good out of Miami right now. A couple past players were talking about how during day games, Miami, the way that their stadium is situated, puts the opposing team in the sun on their sidelines and then gives them shade. And when it's, 90 plus degrees and it's super humid, like that's a complete competitive advantage. And a lot of them were talking about that because, the things that I remember from the game and just like watching, I think I caught the last quarter live, but in general, you saw like Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, like guys were tightening up. They were cramping. They had to be brought off to the sidelines to get extra water. A lot of the offense that was taking place with the Bills in that final quarter was like the clock was running the entire time. There wasn't a lot of pausing. There wasn't, a lot of timeouts taking place. Like guys, being able to get hydrated in those situations. It was like they were running on fumes. They were running on empty because it was go, go, go. So, I think when your head's spinning and you're like, playing in a really competitive game, there's a lot of pressure and stuff like, crazy things can happen. I think that, in a way, it just kind of felt like the Bills were kind of primed to lose, or like kind of the way that the situations worked themselves out. It felt like they were destined to lose in a way, because it was like Josh Allen had a wide open Isaiah McKenzie, for that, go ahead touchdown toward the, final 2 minutes of the game that he just completely botched. He threw it in the ground, and, no, disrespect to Josh Allen. He had 400 yards passing with a couple touchdowns, no interceptions, and, threw 63 balls and, added almost 50 yards rushing on the ground. So it's like, it's not because he's a bad player that he choked or anything. It's just like, can't imagine what your body goes through after, playing in those kinds of conditions for that long and, trying to compete to the very end. But just lots of screwy stuff, like, just time management and, making sure that you spike the ball properly. I think that he had, a gaffe, before the first half where they could have, gotten a field goal had he, just spiked it correctly. But it, the ball was wet in his hands. It was slipping. So all these things start to like add up throughout a game. And I've been in competitive sports like that, whether it's baseball, basketball, or something, where it's like, just things aren't going your way. And it's like, ultimately all those little things start to add up to like kind of your mental outlook for the game. And just kind of felt like at a certain point, they were just kind of destined to lose. But, he makes that pass towards the sidelines. Can't remember who caught it. It might've been McKenzie, but McKenzie was darting back to try to, spike the ball to give him a second for,
Right.
Tyler Bass to kick a field goal. And it's like, I hate this rule about the NFL. Like, you could totally see Dolphins like swatting at the ball or like trying to block the guy and stuff. It's like, hey, like there's got to be some sort of like courtesy provided by the NFL in this situation. Like, if a guy catches the ball at the sideline with like 10 seconds, like maybe just deduct 5 seconds automatically and then spot the ball, because it's just ridiculous, man. Like, if people like seriously blocking people's paths to like, spike the ball. But I felt once the time ran out, I was like, at the end of the day, the Bills kind of deserve to lose. And it doesn't tell me a lot more about the Dolphins either. Like, I think they're going to be competitive, but does this make them like the number one team in the NFL right now because they're undefeated and they beat the Bills? Like, no. I think the Bills are still a tier above the Dolphins in just total team, capabilities, just the roster construction, just their upside. I don't know if the Dolphins are there just yet, but huge division win. I think it is getting them closer and closer to being like an established playoff team, which is what their goal probably should be this year. But yeah, man, I liked watching this final quarter, and good on the Dolphins, good on Tua to like, wobble his way to a victory after getting his back injured in that first half. We'll see what the NFLPA has to say about that, but good on Tua, good on the Dolphins.
Yeah, no, this Dolphins team, like, there's a lot of excitement, which it's great that, whenever the Dolphins, I feel like they're winning, like, just things become a lot more interesting in the NFL. And lo and behold, things are pretty interesting right now. 3 weeks into the NFL season, like, these are definitely like their past two games are probably some of the most interesting games probably in all the NFL. And they're the different ways that they won, like the comeback in the fourth quarter, last game against the Ravens, and then now this, like with the Bills, and like all these like little things just not working out for the Bills. Like this is just like a magical moment, I think, for the NFL. So yeah, so good on Mike McDaniels, aka my brother-in-law, and all that. So yeah.
Next one up, we had the Minnesota Vikings beating the Detroit Lions 28-24. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass it, man.
Slight comeback for the Vikings toward the end. I think that was the narrative of the game. It looked like the Lions were on their way to a nice victory for themselves. But, the Vikings are proving that they're resilient. They're competitive. I feel like they're going to stay that way. Lions still have a lot to prove. I like, the changes that have come about for their team on the offensive side of the ball. Still giving up a lot of points. Feel like now Amon-Ra St. Brown is injured, so hopefully it's not for too long. DeAndre Swift is also, maybe hitting, the medical room too. I mean, he might not play this week, which would be, just too bad for them as a team. I want everybody to be healthy on that side, even though, we're Bears fans. We don't necessarily root for the Lions, but, I like rooting for the underdog. But no, in general, this was a good and necessary win for the Vikings after, losing to the Eagles the way that they did last week. So seems like everybody was getting back on the right track besides Justin Jefferson, who again had, a very blah week. I don't think much of it. I mean, it doesn't tell me anything about his talent or, what he'll do for the rest of the season, but probably good for guys like KJ Osborne and Thielen to get more involved in the offense. Dalvin Cook had a Dalvin Cook game. He might be injured now. Looks like, maybe Madison will be, their feature back for next week. But, and Kirk Cousins, we talked about him, had a very Kirk Cousins-like game, 260 for 3 touchdowns, getting his team back on track with a W. We're still early in the season, but I do think the Vikings will be in the mix for the NFC North crown and, if anything, a playoff spot.
Yeah, no, for sure. Kirk Cousins being Kirk Cousins, this was like, I guess the good Kirk Cousins, where it's like, okay, maybe he's not going to throw like 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, like be all spectacular, but, had an overall solid game against the Lions here. 260 yards, 2 touchdowns, 41 passes. So overall, solid game overall. Gave the ball to Thielen a little bit more this time around and everything. So, I mean, yeah, good overall, solid win, I guess, from the Vikings. And yeah, it is a shame, St. Brown, if he misses some time or anything, because he's been like the stud and the most fun watched player, I think, for the Detroit Lions since like Calvin Johnson, probably. So it's nice that they're able to get, a little bit of flair there. And it also appears like Swift too is out too. So it's like, man, worst timing to have like all these injuries for their top players for the Lions, who some teams actually picked on for fantasy. So yeah,
definitely. Next one up, we had the Baltimore Ravens going over the New England Patriots 37-26. Wayne, pass or grass?
Yeah, I'll definitely grasp this. Lamar MVP. Let's pay that man. I don't know if he needs a GoFundMe or what, but the person this guy needs to get paid. It's terrible what's happened to the quarterback market, I guess. In terms of compensation with Deshaun Watson and hey, I guess the Ravens are an organization that's notorious for not trying to overpay their players, and maybe they feel a little bit remorse with this whole with what they did with Joe Flacco's contract and everything. But man, if there's one player that's earned that amount of money in the NFL in terms of the character, in terms of what they bring to the field, the excitement and everything, and what they overall mean to the team. Like last season, they had so many injuries happen to that roster on the offensive side. Barely. Any wide receivers of the offensive line were gone. Their entire backfield was gone. They were picking people, that were cut from several teams prior. And he was keeping them in the playoff run, essentially. They even had some defensive injuries as well. So he really means a lot to the Ravens and to that, to the community too. Like, I think I even heard Skip Bayless even talk about saying that Lamar Jackson, like, he's probably a better like leader than Tom Brady. Like, he's not one to just like I think Tom Brady is at that more Michael Jordan version of leadership, just like yelling at you and kind of being like more of a dictator. Whereas it seems like Lamar, he's pretty chill, very focused, kind of stoic in his sense, like kind of does things his own way, but a very humble guy, very gets along with a lot of the players and everything. So it doesn't call anybody out. Doesn't have is drama free. But man, he's electrifying on the field. So, and yeah, had a really great game against the Patriots. That's easier said than done with Bill Belichick. Having time to study you and figure you out and everything. So, yeah, I will say that Patriots did have one of the best 2-point conversions, which I'd never thought I'd ever say. Best 2-point conversions I ever saw with Stevenson. I think Mac Jones gave Stevenson. They're trying to go to the right. Then I think Stevenson saw, it was kind of getting blocked, so he went to the left side. And then I think he did like a little option pass back to Mac Jones, who ran in for a touch for the 2-point conversion. And I thought that was just a fun play. So hats off to the Patriots for at least that. But yeah, Pay Jackson, he's if there's any NFL player that needs or deserves $200 million guaranteed, it's Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, what are we talking about? I mean, like, really, what are we talking about? Why hasn't this guy gotten everything that he's asked for? I mean, is it a race issue? Is it a running quarterback issue? Is it an intelligence issue? I'm just confused, man. I've been confused. I don't get it. This guy's going to get his money some way, somehow, whether it's with the Baltimore Ravens or with any other team in the NFL that just wants to upgrade at the quarterback position. There aren't too many that are better than him in all facets of being a quarterback in today's era, because although passing gets most of the recognition, I mean, the ability to run with the ball is something that's definitely evolved with the quarterback position, but nobody does it better than Lamar in that sense. And he's keeping his team in games, gets them to the playoffs year in, year out. Like you said, limited backfield reliability. I mean, name a running back on the Ravens over the last 3 to 4 years that has been there consistently and put up like Pro Bowl level numbers. Like nobody, except for Lamar Jackson. And it's like, who's your receiving core? Like, I love Mark Andrews, but we're all excited about Bateman and Marquise Brown. Flashed a pretty good year last year, but prior to that was pretty up and down, I would say, as like a steady number one, especially. So, just for him to come out, ball out, I kind of expect that at this point. Baltimore, I think the only thing that I have concerns about right now is their defense. It's like, they can shut down the Jets, but, they've been given up some pretty substantial points now to the Dolphins and the Patriots, who I don't really count on them as having like prolific offenses, especially the Patriots. So, luckily for them, I mean, 3 picks against Mac Jones, I kind of expect that. But I think they're really going to have to shore that side of the ball up to be kind of at the Ravens' expectations to get them, beyond a playoff spot at this point. I mean, if they do, that's a scary team. I mean, they're like the Eagles of the AFC. So we'll see where this goes. Good victory for them just to get another one in the books. For New England, I mean, it looks like they're going to lose Mac Jones now for a few weeks. High ankle sprain. I saw that footage. It looked pretty nasty. I've come down with some high ankle sprains in basketball over the years. They're just no fun. Your kind of your ankle balloons up, and it's basically like you have a break when you get to that kind of point where you're out of commission for like a month or so. So hopefully Mac Jones comes back. Ramondre Stevenson continues to have, just a really, dynamic season, in the backfield. He's breaking out, he's putting up really good rushing yards, especially per carry. They've got some guys on the outside that can be respectable. Devontae Parker, Jacoby Myers. I think they're 2 guys that are like consistent wide receivers in the NFL. But I'm still just trying to put my fingers on, who is New England? What are they going to be, post Tom Brady? With Mac Jones out, it just really doesn't bode well. So we'll just have to see, but I don't have many expectations for them to be a playoff contender this season.
Yeah, Patriots are not going to be, they're, for whatever reason, people are just blowing up the Ravens defense, the Ravens defense right now. So they really need to shore up what's happening in the secondary. Apparently, and yeah, just get better overall in terms of defense on the defensive side and figuring out their assignments a little bit more. I know they just signed Jason Pierre-Paul actually, so I know he's like 33 and which I guess is ancient for defensive pass rushers these days, but hopefully he still has something in the tank to provide. And but yeah, the Ravens defense has just that's been the biggest issue I think for the Ravens so far. So yeah, I know they have a new defensive coordinator and some new faces, but most of them are returning vets, so it really ought to have been kind of just some continuity I think in their defense prior to last year. So, but they are getting older, and yeah, they're just not showing up right now. So, but yeah, Ravens hopefully can do that so that Lamar Jackson can get paid and win a Super Bowl and everything. So yeah,
we'll see. Cincinnati Bengals 27, New York Jets 12. Wayne, pass or grass?
I can grasp this. I mean, hey, just good. I think rebound win for the Bengals overall. Burrow had his 3 touchdowns. Was able to get Boyd involved, as well as Chase and Higgins. So I think he only had a couple sacks against him, which if we watched any footage from the previous couple games, like he was getting sacked, I think like 5 times at least, for each game. So I guess their defense got better, or it was just the Jets, and like yeah, we can take those guys. So and man, Joe Flacco passing, like how many he's got to have like over like 120 or something passes, I think, in the past for this season so far. So I think there's been some murmurs of Zach Wilson possibly coming back. I think he might be practicing or something like that, but man, like they really don't want to be running the ball, or maybe it's just actually more so that they are always behind. So good rebound win for the Bengals from a team that won the Super Bowl, or not won the Super Bowl, went to the Super Bowl last year, and now are trying to kind of get their get up and running compared to where they were these previous 2 games, and making sure that also keeping Burrow upright so that he's able to actually deliver the ball to his wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, needed win for the Bengals. Next 3 weeks they've got the Dolphins tomorrow, then they travel to Baltimore against the Ravens, and then they go to New Orleans to play the Saints. I mean, those are 3 pretty tough matchups, especially if you're going into it under 500 to start off your year. So just good on them to take care of business against a team they should definitely be beating at this point. On New York side, Zach Wilson's coming back, starts the clock for whether or not this guy's going to be, the next franchise cornerstone, or whether or not they're going to have to go back to the well to draft another quarterback. After last year, saw some promise, but in the same sense, I want to see Zach Wilson go through a full year. Looks like Breece Hall was, really involved in the running game, passing game. I know a lot of analysts were, just, kind of touting him as somebody to keep an eye on as far as his involvement in 2-minute drills and kind of down the stretch. I feel like the more and more they get this guy involved, the better. He's also been a part of those 2-minute drills, which they say is pretty rare for rookies. So it seems like they have a lot of trust in Breece to be kind of their feature back, to be their future star. And Garrett Wilson, after a breakout year, came back with or breakout week, I should say, came back with 6 receptions for 60 yards. So just good to see those guys establish themselves as pros. If Zach Wilson can be, I don't know who to compare him to really. He's kind of in his own, maybe be like kind of like a Tua type of quarterback, but if he can be respectable down the line, that might be just interesting core to kind of keep an eye on. But as of right now in the present, Bengals should be stomping teams like the Jets, and we'll just see where their season takes them.
Yeah, for sure. Good bounce back win.
Next up, we had the Saints coming up short against the Carolina Panthers, 22-14 in Carolina. Wayne, pass or grass?
I can grasp this. I think overall it was a good game. For obviously for the Panthers, they won, but Christian McCaffrey, definitely like a classic Christian McCaffrey type of game. Good win within the division, but McCaffrey had over 100 yards running, had a couple receptions as well. So it was typical Panthers offense relying on Christian McCaffrey to do a number of things, move the ball. Defense played really well. I think the one at least highlight for the Saints is just Chris Olave, man. I think I picked him as my potential rookie of the year candidate over there. And I feel like I'm looking smart now. He's doing pretty well. I think in terms of targets, I think he had 13 targets last game and 13 targets this game. And if you're on a PPR league, great, because he got 9 receptions this game and 147 yards. So I think he still has yet to hit pay dirt, at least for this season, maybe. But still, overall, he was my favorite wide receiver coming out of the draft. Just was able to burn things or burn players essentially off the line of scrimmage, and is just a great route runner. So, but yeah, good overall game for the Panthers. Classic win. Defense played really well. And if I'm a Saints fan, then it's like, yeah, okay, what's next after Jameis Winston? I think there's kind of that feeling going on right now. But at least they have Olave, and hopefully they'll have somebody to eventually throw it to him, somewhere down the line that doesn't throw interceptions as much. So
yeah, I think the same could be said for Carolina's quarterback too. I mean, I feel like both sides are looking at quarterbacks that once had all the potential in the world, and now it's kind of like the reality setting in with both guys, where it's like, if Mayfield's not throwing over 200 yards and seemingly is having like these battles with New York Giants and other teams that are kind of at the bottom end of the power rankings, I would say, for the NFL, where does this really leave both franchises and their quarterback situations and everything like that? Anything like that, or for those players specifically, it's just like, are they just destined to be backup quarterbacks, maybe spot starters? It's definitely possible. Both teams are at 1-2. What I've heard about McCaffrey, which is a little bit strange, is typically 2/3 of his production comes from the passing game. Whereas, this year it's been 2/3 like just rushing attempts, and like coming back from the injuries that he's come back from, I just feel like giving him 25 carries may not be like the smartest thing to do. Yeah, if you're just trying to preserve your best player and keep him going for the rest of the year. It just seems like a weird mix up for them. DJ Moore continues to be like completely silent as a receiver. I mean, he's a guy that we all kind of bank on to be like a wide receiver one. I'm sure from his own standards, he's just like, just be awesome if I could play with like a real NFL passer and could show the world like what my talents really are. And I don't know, man, just head scratching for both these teams. If Jameis isn't even like, if he just can't be good, it really puts a damper on the Saints' playoff expectations, because I don't expect much from the Panthers personally, but I do expect the Saints to be in it based on, how highly ranked their defense is and, the weapons that he has around him. I mean, you've got Olave, you've got Michael Thomas, you've got, Traquan Smith had a game. For this game, you got Jarvis Landry, Kamara, obviously. It's just like, you got to figure out a way to, keep that consistent with the defense that you've got there and, get yourself into a playoff situation. But to lose games to the Panthers, like, no disrespect to Carolina, but it's like, you got to kind of take care of business there. And, Carolina, I don't know. I think they're just on maybe their last year of Matt Rule, and, with these two quarterbacks specifically, and they're probably going back to the well if I had to guess. So, just kind of a blah game and a kind of an outcome that is hard to describe when you're trying to think of like, what's the trajectory for either team. I just feel like both teams might be, middling, and for the Saints, they just need to start picking it up if they want to be considered, some form of a contender in the NFC.
Yeah, for sure. And talking more about Olave, I think, there's definitely much more upside, I think, for Olave. So pick up Olave, for you fantasy lovers out there. So, but yeah, I agree with everything you just said there.
For sure. Next game, man, what a blowout. The Jacksonville Jaguars went on the road to Los Angeles against the Chargers and beat them 38-10. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll grass. I want to hear your take, man.
So you are going to grass or you're going to pass?
Oh, I'll pass. I think I might have mixed the words up there.
No, it's all good. I mean, genuinely, Trevor Lawrence is putting up just numbers that I can get behind. Is like, man, this guy's second year. He's starting to prove how good he is quickly. And this is the Justin Herbert story of last year. And now we're seeing it in Jacksonville. And it gives me just a lot of, I don't even know how to put it. Like, I like a team like Jacksonville, it's a franchise that, continuously, is in the cellar, always drama, always coaching issues, always, players wanting to find an, early exit from their contract or whatever else, trade me, this and that, with guys like Jalen Ramsey and Leonard Fournette. Like, really enjoyed those, seasons that they had, especially the run that they got, all the way to the AFC Championship game against the Patriots, and just like came up just a tick short. Really rooting on that team to, make a Super Bowl appearance and like prove to the world like they could do the full underdog story. This is the kind of team that, I think could have a breakout year. They could be definitely the representatives in the AFC South. James Robinson, he's gotten his legs underneath him somehow, some way through this Achilles injury where, he busted out for a 50-yard touchdown run. He's in the passing game. He's in the rushing game. Travis Etienne is just like, not even a factor, to be honest with you. It's just like, it's just kind of cool, man. Like Christian Kirk, signed that ridiculous contract that, I mean, most of us would still probably critique, but he's making good on that contract. And, it might be one of those things where it's like Doug Peterson just comes over, brings those like Super Bowl, type vibes from Philly, and like they've got good juju going. So it's like they're just going to ride this, especially if the AFC South is going to let them, be a part of the game. So just unbelievable, man. I like, maybe Justin Herbert's more injured than, we're led to believe. In the same sense, Keenan Allen wasn't part of this game, so that definitely changes the dynamic of the Chargers offense, but there's no reason why the Jaguars should be going on the road and just completely like blowing out a Super Bowl or AFC, conference championship type contender like the Chargers. I mean, it's a little baffling. I'm going to assume, the good things that are going on in Jacksonville and also like the injury stuff that's going on in Chargers probably played a factor into this outcome, but in a lot of ways, huge for Jacksonville. I mean, I hope they keep it going. And, on the other side, I hope that Los Angeles can rebound here. Hope Justin Herbert's healthy and start putting some wins together, but definitely a statement game for the Jaguars.
Yeah, 100%. Great win on on the road and everything. But yeah, it just never looked like Justin Herbert felt comfortable like at all. Not the ball seemed like it just didn't have that same zip as it normally did, or he didn't have he didn't look good out there. So it definitely had probably had to do something with the injuries. Who knows exactly? But kudos to for Jacksonville. They had their past two games, like as two of the good past two games as any team in the NFL. Their defense has really just stepped up. I think they posted a shutout last game, and then this game for 10 now. So these are the Chargers definitely, even with a hurt Herbert, like still probably a better offensive team than most teams. And this is where I'm like, we were talking about Justin Fields and the Bears and everything. Like, there's a reason why the Jaguars, kind of overpaid for the wide receivers, right? It's because they know that in order to have a successful rookie quarterback, you need to be getting him confidence. And how can you get him confidence? Sure, you can, run the ball, have a good offensive line and all that, but you need wideouts, you need playmakers, and, with Zay Jones and Christian Kirk definitely is much more of that, route runner here and there and everything, but Zay Jones could definitely take it over the top, or has definitely done so in the past. So, that's definitely where having those wide receivers, with several years of experience definitely helps out a young quarterback. And this is certainly where I see it's like, oh, this is what it, what things could potentially be looking like. And yeah, their defense is playing really well. They got Trayvon Walker, but they also got, I think, Devin Lloyd, the linebacker out of Utah, who a lot of people thought was one of the best linebackers in the nation this previous season, at least one of the fastest too. So, kudos to them for just, drafting well. All the players that they drafted in the first round have been playing pretty well overall. I know ETN does, he's not looking as nice compared to James Robinson. So, but still, team overall is playing really solid, and that defense is stepping up. And yeah, kudos to Doug Peterson for bringing some stability compared to the Urban Meyer year of last year.
Definitely, I'm just looking forward to what he can do as a coach with this team, and yeah, hopefully we get to the playoffs and we see the Jaguars representing the AFC South. In our next one, we had the Rams going over the Cardinals 20-12 on the road. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass this one.
I don't have much to say. I mean, it feels like another blah game. Still trying to figure out both of these teams. I mean, I feel like the Cardinals are without some major players. Connor wasn't sure if he was even going to suit up for this game. So the fact that he played, he was probably playing injured, if I had to guess, and 12 points as an offense wasn't great. I know Marquise Brown had all the targets and yardage in the world in this one. He seems like the only healthy target, Kyler Murray can really go to, really trust. Same sense, the Rams, 20 points, just kind of seems a little lackluster. I mean, good job on, the defensive side of the ball to kind of limit Arizona and their attack, but it still feels like they're a little bit off. Don't have much to say about either team's outlook at this front. I just feel like, could the Rams be a playoff team? It looks like it's trending in that direction, but I just don't feel like the same team is coming, to the party every Sunday ready to play like they were last year. So that's just my takeaway from this game.
Yeah, no, I agree with that takeaway. Yeah, it seems like the offense just hasn't kind of steamrolled compared to last year. I don't know if it's like Stafford's just getting more pressure on him or what exactly, but team their offensive flow just hasn't been the same, and but it is nice. I guess they got Akers more involved this week, so happy for all the Akers owners. I think I might have mentioned that maybe last episode about saying, hey, it's kind of early for to drop him or anything like that, but yeah, nice for all the Akers owners out there. Cardinals, they just looked a little bit anemic out there. But again, they're going against a really good defense, so it's kind of hard to put it on that. But still, if you're a team that's built around the offensive side, a little bit better production, hitting pay dirt, all that would have been great overall. And to your point, though, yeah, with Marquise Brown, this is definitely where having that DeAndre Hopkins would be nice. I know Dorsch got some receptions there, but he's just not. He's just not the Hopkins persona there. So, yeah, not the sexiest of games overall, but yeah, good for the Rams. Yeah.
Speaking of very unsexy, the Falcons beat the Seahawks 27-23. Wayne, pass or grass?
I guess I'll grasp this. But Cordell Patterson, man, who would have thought that? I know he came out as a wide receiver, played several years at wide out when he was with the Vikings, and he was not the best wide receiver, but great return man. And then all of a sudden, teams start utilizing him as a running back. I know he did some running back duties with the Bears, but now he's full on running back and he's crushing it. 141 yards, a touchdown. He was probably MVP of this game overall. And then, hey, kudos to all the Kyle Pitts owners out there too. He finally got some action after seeing a couple receptions over the previous two games. Got 5 and 87 yards. Didn't get the touchdown, but still, I think good overall. At least Marcus Mariota is looking his way. I definitely called it out. It's guys, you guys are losing and everything, and you guys could score a little bit, a couple more points. Why not look to your most talented player on the offensive side and Kyle Pitts there? So, and see, it definitely sounds like if Chris Olave is not going to win Rookie of the Year, or he's going to come in under competition. Drake London, he's playing really phenomenal there. So good overall win, I think, for the Falcons. Seahawks, just not keeping that momentum, I think, from their opening night win over the Denver Broncos. Maybe all that juju kind of just left there. The football gods were not in the favor afterwards there. So yeah, just not the best game on the Seahawks side defensively. And they made some offensive plays, but honestly, with Geno Smith, there definitely are some limitations there. So yeah.
Who would have thought in 2022 we'd be seeing Marcus Mariota squaring up against Geno Smith in an NFL game? It's just like kind of ridiculous. I mean, it almost feels like in baseball when we consider guys like 4A, quad A players, it's like they're not quite AAA, but they're definitely not pros. I mean, this was kind of one of those games for me. It's like, are both these teams tanking? Like, maybe. I mean, quite possibly if you're throwing out Mariota and Geno Smith on both sides of the ball as your quarterbacks. So it's possible, but there are a lot of bright spots. I think you touched on all of them as far as like guys to keep an eye on. Seemed like DK and Lockett had good games too. Would love to see Ken Walker, the third, become a bigger part of the running game for Seattle. I mean, they got Penny and they got Travis Homer, they got DJ Dallas in the backfield too. So there's kind of like a log jam there. Maybe more toward the second half, he'll get more looks just to see what he's really made of. But in general, this is kind of like, two teams that are going to really kind of struggle, I think, to find, W's this year. And in general, just kind of a throwaway game at that.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up, we had kind of a grinder here. The Packers and Bucks in Tampa Bay. The Packers won 14-12. Pretty low scoring, but Wayne, pass or grass on this game?
I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is, again, like I think last week when we touched on teams that have a lot in place where their quarterbacks don't have to do everything in the world to get their teams victories. I think both of these teams are in that situation where their defenses are, elite. They're firing on all cylinders. Their playmakers, are pretty thin at this point. The Packers, because they didn't go ahead and re-sign or retain guys from last year, and the Bucks because they just fell victim to a lot of injuries. It's like these teams are almost identical when you think about their makeup and who they are, what their identity is probably going to be this year. You got the Hall of Fame quarterbacks. You've got, running games that are pretty strong, receiving cores that are right now pretty thin, and defenses that are like truly some of the best in the game. I mean, I don't think much of the game either team could have won, and I'd feel the exact same about them going into next week. I think they're both in the mix. I think the Packers are still the cream of the NFC North. To me, Tampa the same way in the NFC South. We'll see how this goes. I think one thing that stood out to me is just like, I think Tom Brady, he doesn't need to prove anything, obviously, but I think in the same sense, if we're talking about Super Bowl aspirations, like I just need to see a little bit more from him. I think Rodgers will heat up, but in the same way, I feel like, just out of the gate, Brady's just overall numbers and just kind of like, I don't know what our expectations may be from a Tom Brady type season, and just his ability to put up prolific numbers. Like I think he just needs to kind of build on, what he's shown us out the gate. And in general, don't have concerns about either team. They're both 2-1. They'll be in the mix, but that's just my only impression.
Yeah, no. And if any of these teams win the Super Bowl, like at least initially, it definitely feels like, they're going to be much more of I don't want to say the game managers, but kind of game managers, and then their defenses are just they're both doing really really well on the for both the Packers and the Bucks. So both have playmakers on the defensive side, both like some of the best front sevens in all the NFL. Packers certainly have some playmakers on their secondary too. So with Jerry Alexander and Douglas. So they're good overall team. And I definitely think that, with Brady, it's like he still has wide receivers. They're hurt. I know Gage had a decent game and everything, so was able to contribute there. But that part of that might just be out of sheer volume. But the Packers, though, it's interesting is that we knock on their wide receiver group, but then it's like, yeah, Dubs had a pretty good game. Maybe not Christian Watson. Definitely, I feel like Rodgers hates him, and when he hates somebody, it's like, yeah, he's deep down in the grave there. So, but yeah, Dubs has a pretty good game overall. So I think he just needs to build up that chemistry a little bit more in his wide receivers. But yeah, the Packers, they'll be fine. We'll probably win the NFC North between them and maybe the Kevin Cousins Vikings or Kirk Cousins Vikings there. But then yeah, Tampa Bay, I think they should probably walk away with it a little bit there in their division. So yeah.
In a similar contest for Sunday night, the 49ers came up short against the Denver Broncos, 11-10 in Denver. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll pass this because yeah, I feel like this was kind of a similar game. Well, and yeah, would like your take on it.
I really thought that the Niners were going to win this football game. Just going through it, watching it, that safety that Jimmy G just kind of dropped back on. They're calling it the Dan Orlovsky drop back and everything like that. Like, I think Dan Orlovsky tweeted right away and was really happy the next day about somebody else doing the same thing. But yeah, I think that was a huge play, kind of a momentum swinger in the favor of Denver, but they were getting completely shut out by the 49ers defense. Russell Wilson is still kind of a ghost out there, waiting on him. I mean, I haven't lost confidence in him yet, but he puts together 2 more weeks like this, and I might start to hit the panic button as far as how are the next 5 years going to go with this guy? But I'd like to say that, he at the end of the day, he's still good at managing a game. I think that he'll, build enough chemistry within the offense to become better week over week. I mean, he's got, again, too many weapons there. The defense is incredible for Denver, just week after week holding teams to, low double digit, single digit out, scores. And they're very similar to the 49ers. I mean, I feel like Jimmy G has been there, done it. He's not the same talent that Russell Wilson is, but, he's able to manage a game. They've got enough on the defensive end to keep them competitive. I'm not worried about either team. I would just like to see a little bit more from Denver. San Fran is the type of team that, may have a very unspectacular season, but in the same sense, they'll be a very serious threat when we get to the playoffs. I just feel like that's just what their identity is. They're kind of like the Ravens in that way. They're going to fly under the radar all year, kind of like a Patriots too, just fly under the radar. But then once you get to the playoffs, they have extreme confidence. And, Denver can be that way, as they've shown in past years, throughout the 2010s and such. But I just need to see a little bit more from Russ to get excited about them.
Yeah, for sure. I think with regards to Denver, no, I definitely agree. Russell Wilson, for all the knock on him, kind of just being boring and riding the coattails of great defenses from the Seattle Seahawks. Still a very formidable quarterback. Even last year a little bit. I know he definitely was not his best year, but still is very capable for that deep ball and getting those big plays, rolling out, picking up a first down with his legs. So there's definitely a higher expectation, for me, for sure, with regards to all the weapons that they have. It is nice that at least he's getting Sutton involved. I know Sutton's the one wide receiver I think we both had is yeah, this definitely fits his type of wide receiver that he likes, typically, a bigger wide receiver that can get downfield and catch the ball, which, I mean, a lot of quarterbacks like that, but Russell Wilson, I feel like, he loves wide receivers like that, with Metcalf previously too. So, if he can get the other wide receivers, the tight end Big O there too, is this really nice, quick tight end, I think, for them. If you just get them involved more, I think that they're still trying to figure their offense out, and their offensive coordinator hopefully can help out with that. I know a lot of knock is on Nathaniel Hackett being like the next Matt Nagy essentially, and honestly, yeah, maybe it's a little bit fair, but hey, they're 2-1. But I think 80% of that probably has to do with their just monstrous defense that's just holding teams down. So, like you were saying, like their defense has really kept them in games, and hopefully then their offense can pick it up. Because yeah, it's kind of a waste for this defense just to, be holding these teams to such low points, and then their offense like being kind of Bears anemic. So yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. Hopefully both teams can get back on track and just stand out a little bit more as actual contenders in the NFC and AFC. The Monday night game, we had Dallas winning 23-16 over the New York Giants in New York. Wayne, pass or grass?
I'll grass this. Yeah, the Cowboys, their defense stepped up. I think they had the interception at the end. Go figure, it's Trayvon Diggs, Mr. Either interception or have a touchdown thrown over me, right? So, but hey, Kellen Moore, I think he's doing a really solid job of utilizing Cooper Rush, making not too hard. This is definitely where it's like it would have been nice to have like a Kellen Moore to help out with Justin Fields a little bit. I feel like somebody that's like, okay, we're not gonna make you do too much. Just give the solid pass here and there. Do a little short ones, rollouts to a tight end, things of that nature to get your confidence built up. And like that's kind of how you do it with somebody that isn't as talented, even if they are an experienced quarterback. That's kind of what Andy Reid did with the AJ Feelys of the world, and they were able to win games that way. So it's not a terrible strategy for substandard or young quarterbacks, right? But yeah, the Pollard had some great big plays. CeeDee Lamb had some big plays in there as well. And yeah, I think overall solid game there. And Giants, great that they got out of 2-0 start and everything, but I feel like reality is going to kick into them. But hey, it's great that Dable is having a great season with them so far. I think he was my pick for the Bears head coaching job, and Saquon Barkley still had a great game, so happy to see all that. But yeah, I feel like I don't know how long they could have kept this going, but good win I think for the Cowboys. I think without Prescott there was a lot of question marks here, but sounds like Cooper Rush ain't so bad, and Kellen Moore seems like I think he's earned himself a head coaching job after seeing what he's done with Cooper Rush right now.
Yeah, I mean, for Cooper Rush to have twice the amount of passing attempts and yardage that Justin Fields did, it's just like amazing to actually witness. But good on Cooper Rush. He's 2-0 now as the starting quarterback this year. Definitely getting Lamb in the running game, going. I mean, 30 rushing attempts and, kind of split carries between Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. They both showed out in this one. It definitely seems like Parsons and Diggs are the heartbeat of that team. I mean, even in the game that they lost to the Buccaneers, they still only allowed 19 points. So they're just showing if this defense can just stay strong and, keep them in ball games. I mean, Cooper Rush seems confident enough to just do the Jacoby Brissett and just kind of keep the ball moving and, use the weapons that he has at, his disposal and just keep them competitive until Dak Prescott's healthy. And, not to say like Dak is like waiting in the wings, ready to take them to the Super Bowl or anything like that, because I still have very tempered expectations for the Dallas Cowboys overall. But it's a good win on Monday night on the road. And for the Giants, I, honestly have them still in the same category as our Bears and the Texans and other squads like that, like the Falcons, Seahawks. I don't have a lot of high expectations for the Giants this year. I think they've gotten, out to a nice start for them, but lose Sterling Shepard, for the rest of the year. And then, Daniel Jones just looking like Daniel Jones. I mean, he's very Mitch Trubisky, light or Mitch Trubisky-esque in the way that he goes about his business. This is year 4. I mean, this is one too many years to go for this guy. They had a chance to kind of, do the divorce last offseason. They decided to go forward with another season. There's not much there that I'm excited about. I mean, he's got a decent ability to scramble, but his numbers just don't add up. And, he just looks like he's kind of constantly running for his life out there and making like really weird calls. Like I remember last year he almost got concussed in Dallas. He might have actually got concussed and been kicked out of that game, but like in this game too, I felt like there was an opportunity for him to slide and he just didn't take it. And he just got like somebody like put the like whooping stick down on him, and like I seriously thought he was out for the game after that shot. So it's just like he just doesn't seem to make the right decisions. And yeah, I think his last year is here, and I'm excited about Dable. I think he's a good presence to bring to that franchise, but it's probably in their best interest to just get a high draft order slot and kind of move forward with what's coming ahead for the franchise.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I agree with Daniel Jones. Definitely has that Trubisky thing of like, okay, he can run, but he is the quarterback. And then this is where we knock on Lamar Jackson, right? Where all he does is run. But he has, Lamar Jackson has the most touchdowns of any quarterback right now. And so everybody shut up. Like, you're stupid. How much more can he possibly do to get you to shut up? So, but yeah, to your point, yeah, kind of that Trubisky, like the confidence just isn't there. Great, he can run the ball, he can roll it out, pick up first down, which I think is great for 80s football, but not the modern day, right? So I think that's been what we've been seeing. So yeah, I agree. It would be nice, I think, if they just lose many games and hopefully pick up one of the stud quarterbacks coming up in this coming draft. So yeah.
Yeah, you re-emphasizing the points on Lamar Jackson. I'm just going back through our box scores that we covered for this week, and it's like there are so many teams that would love to have a Lamar Jackson, to where it's just like
he can't pass though, right?
yeah, like, and even in that, he's still passing a little bit better than other guys. Like I have been down on him about his passing ability, but when you make up for it with 100+ yards rushing, your team's putting up 30+ points a week. That's okay. Like you can sacrifice a little bit of the glossy passing stats if your quarterback's able to do that. But overall, this is our roundup for the NFL in week 3. Wayne, did you have any other thoughts on NFL before we turn to our next topic?
I mean, just quarterbacks, man. Like, sometimes you just need one to, put in there, right, to help your team get over the humps, like the Brissetts of the world. But in the end of the day, I feel like it's a quarterback league, and look at the Super Bowl winners of the previous seasons. Like, yeah, you definitely have to have a good defense, but man, quarterback is essential for the modern day age. So yeah.
Got it. Moving on to our next topic. We're going to move to the NBA. We're first going to touch on Ben Simmons, one of our favorite characters in the league. He's back at it with the Old Man and the 3 podcast. JJ Redick, Tommy Alter had a sit-down interview for about an hour and 15 with them, talking his background, his talents, college pro decisions between, being a part of the 76ers organization to now, what he's doing with the Brooklyn Nets. Wayne, I know you had a chance to listen to this podcast, hear what Ben had to say. You can tackle this at any angle that you want. I've got some thoughts to put out there, but I'll let you kick this off, and let's just go from there.
I feel like you have like 1,000 things you want to say. So I remember you messaged me and I was like, well, it's like, oh yeah, let's address his comments. I'm like, which ones? Like, what are you talking about? I think you just meant all of them. So for me at least, I think my biggest thing was like the whole not dunking over Trae Young, or like not finishing off that play. I think it was like Game 7 of the 2001 Eastern Conference. I think it was a semifinal with the Hawks, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so like made a move off of Gallinari, I think it was, and then had like a wide open dunk. But then I know Trae Young was coming over, and a lot of people were knocking on him for passing the ball to Matisse Thybulle, who drew a foul. I think there was like 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, drew a foul, only made 1 of 2 in that game. And yeah, Twitter just went nuts on, everybody went nuts, not just Twitter, like Instagram went nuts. Everybody went nuts on Ben Simmons for like dude, why don't you just dunk that ball? Like, your confidence was shot. I think he was like 2 for 16 for that game too. Like, just was having one of the worst games anybody could possibly have had. And yeah, just had a wide open dunk and passed out of it because he's apparently saw the most threatening lane presence in the world of Trae Young in there. So, but I think in the interview he said that he saw a jersey of some sort of a Hawks jersey and had no idea who it was. So just passed out of it. But then it's like, it was a pretty wide open dunk. Like, even if you had like Clint Capella against you, right? Like, you still could have finished that, just go up strong and all. Granted, he did admit that he ought to have dunked it. So, like, retrospectively, like, yeah, he ought to have finished it. So good, he owned it. But I feel like this is like Ben Simmons' whole thing, right? It's like he'll maybe not all the time own it, but he just doesn't commit to things. I think that was the meme, right? He doesn't commit in relationships apparently, and he also doesn't commit to maybe the game or shooting the ball in the regular season. I think there's always been those memes of like, off-season Ben Simmons versus actual game. Like, he looks awesome in this summer workouts, like shooting threes, like doing crossovers and shooting and things of that nature, right? Just looking like a all-out stud out there on the offensive side. But then regular season, postseason or whatever, can't shoot, doesn't even attempt to shoot, doesn't lacks that assertiveness on the offensive side. I definitely agree with like the whole idea that he's multidimensional, that he is a great rebounder, a great defender, can guard anybody, your center, your point guard, right? All that. But then I remember I actually watched the last 3 minutes of this whole Hawks Sixers game, game 7 in the Eastern Conference semifinals there, and it was like, he was a liability. This is definitely where they were fouling him intentionally once they got the ball, just because they knew he was going to miss a free throw, which he did. So there was all that. I will say though that the biggest culprit though was actually my favorite player of that team, Matisse Thybulle, fouled Kevin Huerta right on the head at a 3-pointer. He made all those threes, and I think they were down by like it was either like 1 or 2 points or maybe 4 points, and then that the 3 points afterwards, like that almost sealed the game after that. So, and it was due to Matisse Thybulle there, and then he also missed that one of the 2 free throws after Ben Simmons gave him the ball. If Matisse Thybulle made both free throws, in a way, all of it would have been forgiven, almost, right, because he ought to have dunked it, but those 2 points would have just went to the free throws from Matisse Thybulle there. So, but yeah, I think that was my biggest, I guess, takeaway or gripe there. I think one thing overall is just, hey, I get the whole mental health thing and all that. But then there's also that side of like, okay, there's mental health, there's like taking it easy and everything, but then there's also like, okay, what about performance, right? And hey, I get it. Like, we're, in this society where everything's about performance, especially in Western cultures. Like, it's about perform, perform, perform. If you don't perform, especially if you're a professional athlete, you're useless. There's no point in your existence. You just make a bunch of money and all that. And I think he just like bought. I think he just read the news. I think he just bought like a New York City like apartment or whatever, or a condo for like $20 million, and it's like, okay, this guy, great, he just bought a condo for $20 million, while your average person is working their butt off, right? And as like a garbage truck driver, and wait, like, what's the guy doing? He's just working out and he's getting, but where's the output, right? Where's the performance? I think that's the whole thing, that why a lot of people just don't like him, is that they're not seeing the output. They're not seeing that progression from Ben Simmons. And hey, yeah, we understand these things from the performance standpoint, from the mental health standpoint. Definitely got thrown under the bus from Embiid and Doc Rivers and all that too, after that snafu at Game 7. But at the end of the day too, like, you got to have that balance between performance, and then sure, taking it easy, mental health breaks, all that. Great. Jordan, I know. Jordan even took a mental health break. That was his whole, going to play baseball for a year and a half, after his father passed away and everything. I get all that. And obviously he's an intense person. But yeah, he performed. He showed up, game on the line. He showed up. Ben Simmons, exact opposite. Doesn't even show up as much on the offensive side too. It hasn't really progressed in his career. And I think that's where a lot of people are feeling the disappointment of all that potential and just not seeing it come to fruition. On top of him getting a large contract, and now he's just become this essential meme of like what could have been essentially. And yeah, I definitely thought JJ Redick. It might have been because like he was his former teammate and everything. Took it a little bit easier, at least allowed him to explain things on him, which I totally get. So, but yeah, it was, at least good to see that Ben Simmons at least going out there. But I think he definitely knew he wasn't going to do an interview with anybody. It would have to be with like somebody like a JJ Redick who was a teammate. I guess they got along, were friends, and kind of had a side. Didn't want to, do a Diane Sawyer interview with him or something like that. So, yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts are more on the latter of what you just covered. It's like this guy hasn't talked for more than a year openly about any or all of the situations that he's gone through as part of the 76ers organization, and then in his, I guess, time with the Nets so far as being injured and being, acquired and all that other stuff. So we really never heard from him formally outside of like a very covered media presser where he's sitting at a table buttoned up and having to answer like really pointed questions. Like, of course, he's going to come with like extremely legal answers. So you don't really gather much from those types of like media appearances. So him going on JJ's show, like for sure is the most comfortable setting for him. JJ and Tommy Alter are very smart in being on Ben's side the entire time. And maybe they truly are, as being like a former teammate and, maybe a friend of some sort if you're Tommy or something like that. But I just kind of felt like this setting is way too controlled, and it was way too like, perfect for Ben to be able to like talk his way out of all the things that I think he did as part of like the Sixers situation, kind of like the ugly exit that was his time there. And we don't know how many video edits and cuts there might have been, if there was any awkwardness, but like really, I'm sure he probably got a script beforehand and kind of knew what questions were coming and able to kind of compose himself. But he kind of has this quality to him where it's like, you just kind of get a sense that he's kind of like not really telling the full truth, or kind of like talking his way out of the things that he did wrong to make maybe the other side look a little bit bad. Like he tried to explain that Sixers situation as kind of like, there was definitely fault on their side and like how, it played out and this and that. And like, I don't necessarily agree with, Doc Rivers and Bede pointedly talking about Ben and, his ability to win championships or something. Like I thought some of that stuff was like a little too much, but most athletes, like that's the kind of thing that just motivates you a little bit more. Maybe you have, your own opinion that you can go live with on the coach or, your teammate there in opposition. But, the sensitivities definitely like were pretty apparent, like from the start. Like once there was some sort of, issue to be pointed on with Ben, he was quick to like find the exits, and it was like fight or flight. It was like immediately he's fleeing. He's fleeing from the situation, from the problems. And all the while, like, didn't really help himself out throughout the way. It was like, the second he wanted out, it was immediate. There was like really no conversations to be had. He didn't want to reconcile. He didn't want to find, some sort of bridge. And you just think that like at a certain point, if you've been with an organization for a few years and you like Doc, you like Joel, like you find a way to reconcile maybe some of these differences that you guys had on the court. Maybe say your part live in your own presser about how you felt the season went, how you felt some of the situations went. But it's kind of like clear to me right away that like, if that didn't work for Ben, He's very quick to just, end all discussions and end all negativity and just kind of like find his way out. And the way he was kind of explaining him, going through OTAs and how, Doc was putting him into drills that weren't, real. And he was the first one getting pointed on and called out. And like, that was, leading to, kind of his declining mental health. It was like, I don't know what's going on with Ben. I don't know what like goes on within his head. But I think Shaq also said best, like he's seen people that have gone through like some severe mental health issues where they've been at like rock bottom, and he's like witnessed them at rock bottom. And he says for everybody else, we all just go through struggles. And like we all go through struggles. Like we all have a tough day at work. We have a tough time, dealing with a partner or a friend or a family member or whatever else. But it's like, are struggles the same thing as like having like persistent mental health issues like depression or, any sort of anxiety or like really hardcore stress? Like, I'm just not sure. Like Ben doesn't, and again, like I'm not a doctor. I don't have the right to prescribe what's going on with Ben, but it's just like, for him to kind of show up in a lot of these other situations with, a very lax attitude, a very like nonchalant, like the world is dead to me kind of vibe. And, things like that, it gives me just like a false impression of like what he's really trying to put out there. I mean, I know his contract situation was also tied to like this ability to point to mental health as like his way of recouping any sort of lost, income that was coming his way. I feel like that was one strong defense of his agent and him in order to like not have to like incur all the fines that were coming on him from the Sixers. And like throughout it all, as we played out last season, I was like really for the Sixers camp. Like, I hope they were able to like beat this guy in terms of like all the penalties they're dropping on him. I hope they're able to, trade him for fair value because, I hate seeing, certain players strong arm their way out of situations. Like if I truly felt like a player was wronged, I would want nothing more than that player to win in his pursuit of getting, a fair trade or getting out of a lousy situation. Like I get that, but there's just too much along the way where I feel like, he's talking about a back injury that was like excruciating. He had like, numbness in his leg and this and that, and like wasn't able to play game 4. But like that entire playoff series, he was sitting on the bench. He was sitting pretty upright in his chair, with a neon green suit and some funky sunglasses on like the entire time. Like at what point, if you had this debilitating back injury, wouldn't you just be like at home or in a hot tub or with a trainer or something like out of like the spotlight? And there's just too much with Ben when I hear him talk, when I hear him like kind of summarize a certain situation where I'm like, alarm bells are kind of going off my head. Like, this just doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Obviously haven't been with him 100%, but like, yeah, I think, him also just calling out Shaq, him calling out Charles Barkley on, their interpretation of everything going down, calling both of them ignorant for just saying maybe he lacks some competitive drive. I mean, it still kind of puts him back at like the same level of maturity we were viewing him at last year. And it's like, if you were really going through all this stuff, you would just say what is, and you wouldn't pay any mind to the analysts for doing their jobs. And like, it's probably got to hurt to hear guys like Shaq or Barkley talk down on you when you probably grew up idolizing these guys. But like, in a way, they've kind of got a point, and they, continue to stand behind that. And I don't know, man. I still think he's a good player. I think he's got a lot of talent, especially defensively, facilitating, an offense. But he does give me like Rajon Rondo vibes. So like when you got a guy like Rondo at certain points in his career where it's like, he's just not going to hit free throws, or he's not going to like hit that big jump shot for you. He really does become the liability you were talking about, Wayne, where it's like, you just can't trust him on the floor. And like the other team knows like, hey, that's an easy way to like put some fouls on the guy, put him at the line, and, put all the pressure on this guy to like, choke in the big situation. And like, he's proved that he can do that. And let's just hope he overcomes that for Ben's sake. But yeah, man, this interview didn't do much for me, like in resurrecting like his character or anything like that. I'm just kind of like, see what happens with Ben. But Ben just kind of seems like he's really about Ben.
Yeah, it definitely is a mental thing, I think, with Ben Simmons. But I do like the Rondo comparison. Yeah, the key difference though is Ben Simmons has all the potential in the world, even still, right? Is a lot bigger of a point guard than Rondo. But then the one thing about Rondo was that he knew that he didn't have a shot. So, later in his career, he developed a shot, actually. I think he shot like above 35%, a couple seasons in a row there. So, eventually he took what was seen as a weakness, and he was definitely just getting older, didn't have the same quickness and, all that he initially had. That was kind of his brand of basketball. So he knew that in order to stay in the league and get, collect those paychecks and everything, I need to hit the spot of threes a little bit more so. So he worked on that. That's definitely where it's like, okay, Ben, like, yeah, you do actually have a similar, I guess, style of play as a Rajon Rondo. Like, both of them weren't the greatest free throw shooters, I don't think, and great defensive players, playmakers, all that. But at least Rondo was able to, they were able to space the ball up a little bit with Rajon, at the one. So that certainly is where Ben Simmons really needs to be making that progress with regards to just being. It's not that's not even necessarily shooting the three. It's just being assertive on the offensive side. Like, he just completely abandoned any type of assertiveness whatsoever in that Eastern Conference series, and it seems like, at least from our perceptions, that that's affected him even wanting to take the court. Like, with last year, obviously he got hurt, and it's, again, we're not doctors, we don't understand the full scope of things, but it's like he was just completely silent, didn't want to talk to anybody. And it's like, I do like the whole fight or flight thing that you were talking about, because it definitely seems like he is much more of the flight, or kind of just deer in the headlight, if you will. Just like, okay, life, whatever it gives, I'll take whatever life gives me. I'm still collecting paychecks, all that. Which, I get from, I guess, the mental health standpoint. Is just, okay, I'm just gonna accept maybe that I am just an overpaid former number one pick, right? But then there's got to be, I think at least from the voyeur standpoint, like just onlookers on his career, on his basketball play, on him as a celebrity. It's like, I think a lot of people would just have more respect if you become more, right? I think one example actually somebody brought up was like Andrew Wiggins, right? Granted, hey, they're different teams. Anybody can play with the Warriors and reach their potential, right? Which it seems like that's what Wiggins did this previous year, was shutting down, the best wing tandem in the NBA last year with Tatum and Brown, for the Celtics during the finals. But it's like, we all saw that progression that Wiggins made, became a more efficient player, made an all-star team, did all these things. And he eventually also became a better, three-point shooter. He wasn't always the best three-point shooter. Started to attack the ball. Great defender. Used his athleticism for defending. So, really became a full, an all-around player, an all-around basketball player. That's somewhere where it's like, with Ben Simmons, we know you can shoot, so shoot. Like, there's hurdles there mentally. So yeah, it's this interesting conundrum of like, okay, are we just going to be understanding of you performing to not your fullest potential that at least we believe that you can do, versus obviously, hey, I'm good being me. That's okay. I'm going to make my money and screw you all. Sometimes I think it's harder for us as normal people to be like, yeah, that's totally cool, fine. We would probably do the same thing, right? Because honestly, I think at least half of people, like, if we were to like, all of a sudden get into Ben Simmons' body, his soul, and everything, and take over his life, right? We might do something similar. Is just chill, just collect the paycheck, wear nice clothes, date supermodels, and all that. But then at the same time, it's like a lot of players in Ben Simmons' position, like Kobe Bryant, like he wasn't necessarily some sort of athletic freak of nature. Like, he worked his ass off, similar, 6'6". Like there's a lot of players that are 6'6" and never made themselves anything in the NBA. But I think a lot of people, they see Ben Simmons, they see a physical specimen with all the talent in the world, and yeah, we would love to be in that situation. Ideally, think that we would show up and become the best player of all time, but yeah, it just hasn't happened. And moments like that, not dunking on Trae Young in the paint, it just makes it look pretty bad overall, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah. And if history, has proved anything really, especially recent history, it's like once you start getting into like these, I guess, types of dialogue within the media, and it's more about like dissecting you as far as like your personality, your intentions. Like if we look at a James Harden, a Kyrie Irving, two of our favorite guys on this show, it's just like it's going to take a lot for him to push through that, like push through the perceptions, push through the media speculation. I mean, he's constantly putting out, buzzworthy clips. Like this thing is just creating like a firestorm again. And it's just like, is this going to be what happens for the rest of your career? Are we always going to be talking about the what if, or, we're going to be, now more focused on, your ability to bounce back from all this adversity, over the last years that in part were self-created. And it's like some of these guys like, Kyrie, it's like they'll put out, these narratives that like the media is against them, or, they're fighting against all this adversity. And it's like when we really like dissect it and look at it again, it's like, well, you played a pretty big part in, stirring a lot of this stuff up within us. So it ultimately just comes down to like how much they want to sacrifice for the game itself. Like you're saying, these guys are collecting massive paychecks, and if they're getting absolutely ripped apart by people, like it's got to be tough for Ben to go through the stuff that he goes through with like how people react to, his actions. But, are these guys really committed to the game of basketball, to being the greatest of all time? And I think that's where Shaq and Charles come from. It's like we're from the era of like, punishment, hard work. We're trying to make sure that anything that we say is critical in the sense of getting you to the next level and getting you through the next level after that and the next one after that, because it's so hard to win a championship, and it's much harder to win multiple ships as one of the, the greatest players on the floor. So like they see that talent in Ben, and they're ultimately like pretty disappointed at the route he's decided to take. So I think that's where it comes from. Man, it's going to take a lot for him to, especially if he's battling some sort of like mental, difficulties. Like it can be hard for him to like shape that up and be, a all-time great at that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, he's 26 years old, still has prime years ahead of him, is in, it's definitely a kind of a funky situation, but they certainly have players, at least in the basketball sense, that kind of complement him in that they, kind of like, with Kyrie, I think Ben Simmons is happy to, not go 2 for 16 and just hand the ball off to, two of the best shot creators in like NBA history, right? With Kevin Durant and Kyrie. So I think he's in a good situation in that sense. So, hey, if they can make a run in the playoffs and he performs well, does he like completely redeem himself? Is all forgiven? Maybe not, but I feel like that's like a step in the right direction, is if he can show up, contribute, and be as good of a player as a lot of people think that he can be. He doesn't have to shoot threes, right? I think that's one good thing about his situation. They have plenty of 3-point shooters, plenty of shot creators. If he can be that kind of Draymond Green a little bit, just kind of a playmaker, could play good defense. He's definitely been like an aggressive person, like around the paint, like he'll finish and things like that. So like he's very much capable of scoring around the paint. It's just not really a shooter. So which I think is good for he's an awesome passer, great court sense, and then defense. And I think if you can do that for this team with the Nets, like they and Kyrie and KD, show up, then I think they can definitely be a force to be reckoned with. So hopefully, his story isn't finished, and he can help create the story that he wants. And for basketball fans' sake, hopefully it is something like maybe more so the Andrew Wiggins down the future. So
Yeah, I mean, I have a pretty high expectation of what the Nets should be this year, especially after their, off season. They get through all the rumblings, grumblings, and still bring back, the core of their team plus, a few, free agent acquisitions, trade acquisitions. Like they did a pretty good job at shaping up, this new version of the Nets. And I want to just see it on the floor. Like we wanted to see Harden, Kyrie, KD play like a full year together, which didn't happen. We want to see this happen because it's better for basketball. It's better for basketball to have, the Eastern Conference be as strong as it can be. The West, perennially is pretty strong too. So, we're seeing a lot of, big stars emerging in the game, creating a new kind of like top 20 in the game, but, wanting to see their franchises be at their, absolute peaks when we get to playoff season. But, with that, the Nets have high expectations. So do the Celtics. But, as we've seen, Wayne, the Celtics are going to look a little different this year, especially on the sidelines. We had Ime Udoka, the head coach of their team, actually get recently suspended for a full season to what we know as, an issue with having consensual sex with a staff member, but that there is more to this story that is not fully disclosed, but in the same way paints a picture that something happened behind the scenes, beyond, the simple transgression of having sex that, with a staff member that goes against the team's policy. So did you have any sort of initial thoughts to this that have maybe changed over time with recent reports? And, do you think the penalty is fair? And, what would you do if you were the Celtics? And maybe, what would you do if you were Udoka at this point?
yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things to touch base on here. But at least with regards to like suspensions, right? I think it's hard it's hard for me to understand sometimes too, but it's like, yeah, a lot of suspensions, contracts, right? Like it's not fair. Nothing is ever fair, just like with life, right? Not to be all like, downtrodden or cynical about stuff, but none of this is fair. So that's okay. Like that's part of the thing. Like, we talk about Lamar Jackson, his contract versus Deshaun Watson, right? Like, is that fair? No, it's not. Model citizen quarterback, MVP, like, killing it versus some guy sitting on the sideline right now and he's not been convicted of rape and all, but it's just been a lot of shady stuff. And I think even his contract says that he has to use a masseuse that's part of the team, like can't go to some massage parlors, things like that. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, and another thing too is like we ought not to be thinking about I don't know why there's this whole idea that like the NFL and NBA or MLB ought to be this moralistic entity or association. Like they're not. They're just people, just like us, And I think when we put that degree on them to be like better people than us, because just they're more athletic and the best athletes of human specimens possible. I don't think that's fair for either them or us as a society to just judge these people as perfect people. Like not everybody is Lamar Jackson. Knock on wood. Like I hope Lamar Jackson, nothing comes out with Lamar Jackson or anything like that. But he's definitely has handled himself as well as possible. Same even with LeBron James, off the court, right? So all that being said, nothing is fair. Suspensions aren't fair. It doesn't make sense that Udoka got the same level of suspension as fights that the Malice in the Palace and stuff like that. I know some of them got suspended for the remainder of the season just for that. And it's not even there was nothing on the court that happened. It wasn't sexual assaults, at least from our understanding. For me, and work in the corporate world and everything, it feels like it has to do more on the legal HR corporate setting rather than it has to do anything with the more legality or what do the predecessors of suspension look like for, certain situations like this. I think it has like maybe a lot more so to do with, having that corporate culture and all that, which is very boring. That being said, I would not be surprised if there was, Udoka was sleeping with, I think the biggest rumor has been like sleeping with an executive's wife or something like that, right? And they definitely have been. I don't think that the Celtics have been necessarily handling it maybe the best with regards to anything like that, because if they were to like deny that or whatever, and then it came out like, oh, he actually did, then they would look bad. So, yeah. So I guess I understand where the Celtics are coming from withholding some information and, kind of being very vague about things and not saying too much. But I think honestly, at least the boring answer is that it more so has to do with like HR and legal and all that rather than a full out, he did some he did some dirty with some people's wives or whatever. So at least that's what I think. Otherwise, I think he would have been fired immediately or something like that if something like that really did happen. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of surprised. Like, why didn't he get fired? Like, why did he get suspended for a year? Why is he accepting that? I think that a lot of those questions come to my mind because now it's like they bring in Joe Mazzulla, who's going to take over as head coach. He's going to do that for a full season. I mean, is there any scenario where Ime Udoka just finds his way back into head coaching spot? I mean, like the Celtics would have to be so bad this year, underperform to a point where they're at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, playoff standings, and they get, first round exit, something like that, where it's like truly shocking.
Yeah.
Where I feel like Udoka, gets back into the mix as their head coach. And from Udoka's perspective, it's just like what he actually did must be pretty bad, because why would you take a year-long suspension, sit on the sidelines with no guarantee that you'll be the head coach of the Boston Celtics again when you're just coming off of a finals appearance? You had, just great reports behind you as a head coach in your first season. It's like, for me, I'd just be like, man, fire me, because I'll just go out and take a job with whoever. Like, I'll go coach for the Magic or the Charlotte Hornets or, Portland Trail, whoever it is. Like, I'll just go find another job. And, when I first heard the reports, I was kind of, taken aback, like you were saying with Deshaun Watson. It's like, okay, we give Deshaun Watson 11 games for, abusing 20 plus, massage therapists. And, we give Kareem Hunt only 8 games for domestic violence. And we let Tyreek Hill off the hook for, domestic violence with his son and stuff. And it's just baffling to me, how some of these situations kind of work out with suspensions and everything else. But like, to me, what ultimately resonated the most was Matt Barnes actually put out a video on Instagram where he was basically covering his own tracks on his initial reaction to everything. So he first reacted the same way I am, where it's like, whoa, like consensual sex. Like, I know it's against the team policy, but a year, like, you got to be kidding me. Like, both parties agreed and this and that. But he basically said that, although it's not being reported, he had talked to sources within like the Boston Celtics organization. Like, it's far worse than any of us are thinking. So, it just gets me to like kind of thinking like maybe there was some harassment involved in this, or, maybe not everything was consensual, or maybe there was just other elements, other layers to this. But, it's hard to like fully weigh in and give like an honest take or opinion without all the facts. And because we're dealing in so much obscurity right now, it's like my ultimate takeaway is like, what are we waiting for with firing this guy? And what are we waiting for if you're Udoka? If the NBA is not going to come in and say, you're suspended further, you can't coach for this whole season, like, why not make yourself available to make some more money? Like, just generally speaking. And, all this like aside, like, yeah, I definitely have sympathy for, the woman that was involved in the situation. If there's something like beyond consensual sex, like what the report is, what the team policies are, like, this truly was like a, a harassment situation or something that's caused like lingering effects. Like obviously that's very important. Also in all this, I don't want that to get lost in the situation. It's just like, yeah, man, this whole thing is very puzzling. It makes it very hard for people to draw like accurate conclusions, and everybody's talking like out of their ass for the most part about like what the situation is, and like,
yeah,
it's just not good for anybody involved in this. So like, if we just get like a little bit more clarity on what happened,
yeah.
and that would just save everybody in all this.
Yeah, no, there's so much speculation. It's one of those like, a lot of people, when they don't fully see all of the elements into a story, they'll come up with their own story, and it's usually the worst that we think of, because that's how just we like stories sometimes. There's a reason why reality TV is always like the highest rated shows on television, right? It's just trash we like to see sometimes. So kind of like burning wrecking cars on the highway, right? I think the one thing that I'm thinking about now is like, what if the Celtics, like, hey, we made the finals with Udoka, like that doesn't always happen, like maybe we do want to keep him, maybe they did talk with like Tatum and Brown and whoever and think like, yeah, we want to keep him and everything, right? Maybe the idea, though, again, kind of going to this whole like boring corporate HR thing, right, is like, what if they obviously can't fire the woman, right? Because if they fire her, then because he is a higher position than she is, I'm assuming. I don't think she. Then this is where we just don't know, but just thinking he's of a higher position than she is, just that's probably what it is. Then they can't fire her, so maybe they're just waiting for her to find another job. I don't know, something stupid like that. Because yeah, with like, I'm guessing that him and Nia Long are now done now, right? I don't know if he wants, yeah, probably, right? I don't know, because from my understanding is that he was contacted by the Celtics to end the relationship, right? And to like stop contacting her in their normal like romantic ways or whatever. He didn't do that. Like he still continued to advance on her. They were both contacted like, hey, please stop the relationship. Like this is inappropriate. And then they still, at least he did, from my understanding, still contacted her. So now I'm thinking like, is this like they're just trying to give her time, maybe also to like find a new job, make it not look as conspicuous of like, oh, you're just leaving because of this. Maybe they do want to, I don't know, maybe they do want to spend the rest of their lives together. Maybe if that's the case, then maybe this is like, okay, Udoka, you did some stupid stuff. This isn't going to look good. There's going to be a lot of shit being said, but you're going to be suspended for the remainder of the season. Do you love her? Great. Okay, you find a new job and everything. Udoka, you stay here, because we need you, because that's how it works. Like, if you can do something, we'll overlook all your stupid, stuff in your closet. I mean, isn't that the whole thing? Like the hot girl index, right? Like the guys will put up through a ton of crap, right? A ton of crap, just because you're hot. If you're like a couple degrees less hot, okay, yeah, not as much. Like there's the hot factor. It's the same thing with like coaches, players, in leagues, right? It's just how it is. It's how we're trained at from people, right? So maybe the idea is that they're moving these pieces in order to keep Udoka, and then so she can find a new job and they can live happily ever after, and he's still a Celtics coach. I don't know, but again, we don't know because they're not sharing the facts, so we're making up stories.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like we've got to kind of continue to fill in the blanks with all this stuff. But I think even where you're getting at makes sense in theory. Like there'd have to be enough of a carrot attached to the stick for Udoka to stick around and to like wait to see what opportunities may exist with him within the organization moving forward. Because in today's NBA, in today's NFL, in today's MLB, there's always going to be money elsewhere. There's always going to be opportunity elsewhere, especially when you've proven yourself on the highest of levels. And if you're as good as Udoka is in his first year with the team, that, to a lot of our opinions, were like a middle of the road team until they really, showed out on the defensive end and these stars took a leap. It's like he could do that for any other organization. So we'll see what materializes with this situation. But overall, my reactions off the bat were pretty strong, like kind of in Udoka's offense. But as these, stories and details have played out, I mean, like in other situations, it's good to keep yourself in check before you scramble to judgment right off the bat, because a lot of this stuff happens for a reason. There's a lot, I don't think consensual sex would immediately lead to a year suspension unless there was more to it. And, even though it wasn't reported off the bat, like a lot of stuff pops up at the very end or along the way. So kind of keep yourself in check and, really hope that there's no, psychological damage involved in this, or, any sort of embarrassing information or anything else tied to the woman involved, the women that could be involved within the organization, et cetera. It seemed like Brad Stevens was pretty shooken up about the whole thing, and, just on the women's, angle of this and everything else. So we'll see what happens, but glad we covered that. To kind of wrap up this show, looking at the NFL, we have the perennial Pro Bowl competition. That game is now scrapped in place of a flag football game and other skills competitions. Wayne, did you have any thoughts or reactions around this at all?
Finally, the Pro Bowl is always trash. So I think several Hall of Fame NFL players have come out and said this to make sense. Players are just making way too much money to be why are we doing this, right? Or taking it seriously. And a lot of them just honestly, they just don't show up, and it creates this. It really just kind of just takes that the prestige of being a Pro Bowler out of it anyway. So it's what's the point of this? So I think it makes sense to just make it flag football. Still have these fun skill competitions, which I definitely see, and a lot of them are great, for social media, like Instagram or whatever, just a short, 5-minute session of just watching, I don't know, Jalen Ramsey, trying to block or pick off a pass from, Justin Herbert or something like that, in a soccer goal or something like that, right? Fun stuff. I think that is good for the game. Keeps it light. If it's gonna be in places like Hawaii, or I think it's gonna be in Vegas this coming off season here, then it's just make it fun. Nobody really cares. Just get the players there, have them have a good time, and show some things on social media, and I think that'd be great for the game. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of the just all-star game stuff in general is kind of hokey, especially with football. It's such a dangerous sport. Really don't want to see. I mean, who's actually competing in a tackle football game at the end of the year when you've gone through, now what's 17 weeks of football, playoffs, et cetera. It's these guys put it on the line every week, and even then, it's extremely dangerous. So to bring it to just a trivial all-star game with no implications, it's just completely pointless. I don't know if I'll be truly into the skills competitions. I felt as a kid, I always liked the home run derby and slam dunk contests and some of the stuff the NBA has been putting on. The all-star games, I mean, baseball is a little bit more legitimate. It's run a little bit, tighter than maybe the NBA's all-star game is, which is kind of usually a 150 point to 140 point affair, which is just kind of no fun to watch as a basketball fan because nobody's playing defense. So it's maybe we just got to rethink what it is to be an all-star. And I think the reason why I brought this up is I guess I'd just at the year's end, it'd just be nice to know who the writers thought was part of the all-star team. Just in theory, I don't need to watch you guys play it out. I just want to know, like, who are the top 15 guys in the like Eastern Conference versus the top 15 guys in the Western Conference in the NBA. And for the Pro Bowl, like, tell me who's the full roster, AFC, NFC, who are the starters? Like, who did you guys truly recognize as the best players at their positions for this year? Like, that kind of stuff matters to me. But like, yeah, I guess sometimes like watching it out in practice, like it, it prolongs the season. It prolongs like the break in the middle of the year when we're just like kind of wanting to watch like actual competition to just make time for this other stuff. And I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting a little older. I think as a kid, like that kind of stuff was like super cool. And maybe it is super cool to kids still, but like, yeah, man, I don't know. It just feels like these guys have so much going on, and load management is now a thing, and guys are getting injured so much in all sports where it's like, just give these guys some time off or something. And like, I don't know, man, just like wrap this shit up.
Yeah, maybe just have them pull. This is definitely where it's like, well, yeah, maybe we create like I don't know, like an AI or like the metaverse, right? I know that's a thing, right? Like, yeah, just have a metaverse like avatar of like, Derrick Henry running into Kenny Clark or something like that from the Packers. Like, I don't know, something like that. Just maybe we just watch like a big Madden game instead, and just have the players play and just do that instead. Like, it's becoming that. It's like, okay, you get the recognition, right? Is that all? Like, you want us to do anything else? Maybe it's just that we just give them the recognition. Don't have to play a game. Maybe we just have them tell us some stand-up comedy. I don't know. Like,
yeah. Like, just get these guys together and do like family reunion stuff. Like, have them do like a pie eating contest, or like eggs on a spoon races, or like potato sack races. Like, just stupid stuff, man. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Just entertain us a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think my point is like, okay, yeah, like you're the here are the 15 top players and everything. Like, does it really matter if they compete? And like, hey, I get that there's like an MVP at the end or whatever, for a lot of these All-Star games, but then it's like, I don't know, does that really matter? Like, in the end of the day, does it really matter? Like, I think out of like all the Hall of Fame accolades, like it's probably like the least on the totem pole there, right? So that's certainly is where I'm just like, get them together, whatever, have fun, and again, these people are just getting hurt. Load management's a thing. They're only playing either more games or their schedules are just getting crazier. So it's like, sometimes they just want a day off, right? And yeah, their bodies are their products. So yeah, you might as well just give them some time. So yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to hold out hope that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson go one-on-one in a Connect Four competition, the next Pro Bowl or what have you. But I don't know, man. Yeah, just let's put this to bed. All sort of all-star game talk and activities and stuff. But anyways, pretty long episode here. Wayne, do you have any other outside thoughts, closing thoughts that you want to put in this episode?
Yeah, I'm just reading a report about butter and cheese consumption just hit a new record high this last year. Curious, Pat, what is your favorite kind of butter and cheese?
All right, so butter for sure is Kerrygold Irish butter. I don't know if you've had this stuff. It is legit. It's probably from like cows in Ireland, specifically. And I'm not gonna lie, man, before you try this, I want you to do one thing. Go to the grocery store this weekend. If it's a boutique grocery store, even better. And buy like the warmest, freshest baguette that you can, like starting in that morning. And I want you to go right to the cold aisle and grab Kerrygold butter off the shelf. Cut up like a quarter of that thing and just put it all over that baguette. Throw it in the oven for like split it in half, throw it in the oven. If you want to drop some like garlic powder or some oregano over the top, put that thing in the oven for like 15 minutes. And I swear to God, You're just gonna die. You're just gonna sit in your couch or your chair. You're gonna like fade away in that thing for like an hour, just thinking about how good that experience was. That's number one. I think you also asked for my favorite cheese generally. Man, this is tough, man. This is like trying to pick the AFC NFC this year. But it's tough, man. It goes on one or two levels. Like I love like a really stinky like white cheddar or Parmesan. It just has like that super sharp tang to it. You can pair it with like a good wine. You can just eat it straight. You can eat it with cracker bread, whatever else. Meats, you can just like grate it over meats. Like it's just like that. Or I'm like a blue cheese gorgonzola guy too, which I think is just like I can eat it straight. Like I can eat, that on a cracker, put a little honey over the top. I could put it on a burger. I could put it on a steak. Like I could put it on a pizza. Like I could do it any single way. I could dip my wings in it. I don't know. I get crazy, man. We get crazy. But man, that's probably my overview, man. So I've got the Kerrygold butter, and I want you to get on that white cheddar, or I want you to get on blue cheese gorgonzola. But Wayne, I'll kick that question right back to you.
Okay. I mean, both those sound awesome. I'll probably do that now. Kerrygold with some bread. Okay. I like how you described that sequence. It was very dramatic.
I was ready for it somehow. I don't know how.
I think like... you were mentally, yeah. You were like, okay, I know this. I know the structure.
I got this shit.
So, butter. My favorite butter is Tillamook. Tillamook butter out of Oregon. Was able to go to their their headquarters over there in Oregon, but they serve awesome butter, just the best. They also do like ice creams too, so you might be able to find that like in a Kroger or something like that, because I think they ship nationally. I actually saw some Tillamook here, which I was like, oh, they made it big. Good for them. I had no idea that they were like a national brand. So really good ice creams and really good cheese, either just for cooking or for baking, or even just a simple thing on like a bagel or bread too. And then my favorite cheese, hands down, it's got to be, whenever there's a charcuterie board, you see the crackers, you see the cheeses, I'm like, all right, who's going for the brie? Because I'm gonna go for the brie. I'm gonna wipe that shit out.
It's so soft. It's so soft.
It's so soft and gooey, and I love it. So I'll make sure I see the brie. I make eye contact with it. I make eye contact with everybody else that's looking at the cheese, and I give them the stink eye, and I just go straight for the brie. I go for the brie first, and then I pick out the cracker. That's how I roll. So yeah.
Man, respect for the brie and respect for charcuterie boards. Like coming in hot over the last 5 years, especially. I feel like in my life, like nothing kind of gets me more excited than when like you sit down at a nice restaurant, or like maybe you're at a winery or something, and they just come with like that huge slab of wood, and you've just got like 3 or 4 meats and like 3 or 4 cheeses, maybe some pickles on the end. Like in my mind, it's just so simple. It's like Lunchables, grown up. But man, it's just like you have a good wine next to it or whatever else you're drinking. It's just like, man, your day is set. If you got sunshine that day, like, that's the weekend. Your weekend is just made.
Yeah, no, we're all just a bunch of kids, man. Like, like Lunchable, that's what charcuterie board is. Boxed wine, like we had that. We had boxed juice, growing up, putting in like our lunch boxes. So, why not, right? We're basically just grown children. So, yeah.
Simply put, yes, we definitely are. We're still kids at heart. Man, dude, I don't know if you're done with your final thought, but now like. I'm completely frazzled. I don't even have like
I'm salivating.
I don't have anything to come back with. I'm thinking about all these dairy products and everything else. But yeah, man. No, ditto. I unfortunately I wasn't able to find this competitor. I was speculating a little bit with Olive Garden going head to head with Applebee's and TGI Fridays now on these food wars and things like that. Like it's going to take me a long time to get out and do, these places that are on my list now. But In general, this weekend it's supposed to rain a ton. Hurricane Ian is blowing its way through the south, going to come up the southeast coastline. So Virginia's going to get it. Was supposed to go golfing this weekend. I think that's scrapped, and I was supposed to have a baseball game that's going to be scrapped too. So I'm going to park up with some NFL football on Sunday. Just enjoy my time. Expecting my fantasy team to win more than crossing my fingers for a Bears victory. But in general, love having NFL back. Can't believe it's week 4 already, and excited to see how the rest of the MLB shakes out, and hopefully we're able to cover our playoff episode pretty soon.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I'll probably be doing the same thing for my NFL Sundays as well. Except I don't have, an active God keeping me in. It's more so just like, wow, it's getting a little bit chilly outside. What am I going to do? I'm just going to chill inside and, watch TV, grown men like playing a kid's game. Like nothing wrong with that. So
man, it's the greatest part of the year, kind of ending like seriously every Sunday. If I do nothing but watch football, I'm totally happy. And then like if you have a couple buds over, it just makes like the whole day that much better. I don't know. It's just a good time of the year. I think only like those that follow football really understand it. I know for some of our wives or significant others like who don't like the game, like they're just like, how do you actually sit down and watch the TV for like 10 hours straight? But like everybody else who does gets it. So anyways, man, great episode. We'll catch up more on the Ball and Breakfast podcast with Wayne Pua. I'm Patrick Miller, signing off for this edition.
Thanks all.